The torches along the gallery gutters hissed in a midnight drizzle, their firelight pushing trembling bands of gold across the damp stones of the Tower of the Hand. Robert Baratheon lay awake despite the apothecary's poppy and the soft pulse of summer rain. The boar had gutted his left flank 10 days past, but Grand Maester Pycelle's pincers of silver and hot wine had drawn the last of the corruption, and the wound, padded now with moss-soft marish gauze, itched like a serpent's tongue against his ribs. He welcomed the discomfort. Pain, at least, was honest. Pain reminded him he still lived. Eddard Stark stood at the window's narrow throat, half-moon silvering the gray in his beard. The Hand had sat the long vigil each night since the hunt, refusing chair or goblet. Rain darkened the wool on his shoulders, yet the Northmen neither shivered nor moved, as though carved from the same granite as Winterfell's walls. Robert watched him through half-lidded eyes, recalling the boyhood summers they had shared in the Vale, when their blades were wood and their wars mere boasts flung across the Aerys courtyards. Those mornings smelled of shale dust, apple bread, and unpromised destinies. Now everything stank of rot. "Come away from that slit, Ned," Robert rasped at last, voice raw with disuse. "You keep vigil like a gargoyle. I'm healed enough to endure your company without the rain." Eddard turned. Beneath the hooded solemnity lay something sharper than grief, a guardedness Robert had sensed ever since the man rode south. Ned crossed the room and drew the curtains against the drizzle. The soft, quick rasp of linen, a whisper amid the chamber's hush. He sat at Robert's bedside, elbows on his knees, and for a dozen heartbeats neither spoke. The silence was a blade between them. "You should still be resting," Ned said. "I am resting," Robert grunted. "Just not rotting." He shifted, cursed the ache, and managed a grin. "The boar was a fierce bastard, but I was fiercer." Ned's mouth twitched. "Alive is better than fierce." Robert's grin faltered under the weight of his friend's gaze. Ned's steadfast brown eyes held secrets thicker than the dusk. Secrets, Robert knew, had poisoned this court like unseen mold creeping behind silk hangings. Cersei's glances, Pycelle's cautious phrasing, even Renly's sudden, frantic suggestions that Joff arrange a tourney in the king's honor. Each detail had pricked Robert's hunter's instinct these past moons. Yet none of it mattered more than the suspicion Ned carried like a frost within him. "You found something," Robert murmured. "Something in that book of bastards you pored over with Jon Arryn." Ned's gaze dropped to his hands. Calluses ridged his knuckles like stone towers. "I found answers that only raise worse questions. Questions about my children," Robert said. "Say it plain, old friend." The candles guttered. Ned's shoulders set, iron under wool. "They are not yours, Robert." The words clanged like a portcullis slamming down a throat. Robert forced a laugh, part denial, part rage. "I fathered my share of black-haired, blue-eyed pups, from Dorne to the Dornish marches. You deny me the ones born under my own roof?" "Your seed breeds true," Ned said quietly. "Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. None bear a Baratheon's hallmarks. Their hair is Lannister gold, their eyes the same green as—" Robert slammed a fist onto the coverlet, shredding the gauze of composure. Pain burst up his torso, stars swimming at the edges of his sight, but fury steadied him. "Cersei." He spat the name like sour wine. "I knew her games, Ned, but hoped for decency enough to honor vows made before gods and banners." Ned's face was carved winter. "Hope blinds worse than wine." Robert sagged against the pillows, winded. In the hush, rain ticked on shutter and sill, counting heartbeats. "What would you have me do?" "Name Stannis Heir. Sit the realm beneath that sour Puritan until we're all choked on parchment and prayer." "Me. Truth demands recognition, whoever's crowned." Robert's chuckle was hollow. "Stannis might be truth, but he is no song men will follow. Renly has charm yet no claim. The realm will fracture, and I'll not watch another war for crowns." He let head sink, beard matting on his chest. Lyanna's face surfaced. Gray winter roses in her hair, blood on her pillows, crossing time like a ghost. With Lyanna's death, everything noble in Robert had soured. Yet her memory still cut deeper than the boar's tusk. "If only I had a son of my own blood, Ned. A child untainted by Lannister scheming." The silence stretched until candle wax pooled at bronze cup feet. Ned rose, turned his back, shoulders taut as rigging in a storm. "You do," he said. So softly Robert thought he dreamed it. Lightning split the sky outside, whitening the bedchamber. The word echoed, "Doe," like the first crack in a glacier. Robert levered himself upright despite the pain. What madness is this? Ned faced him, the mask gone, and grief bared like raw sinew underneath. "You asked me once about Jon Snow. I gave you answers that misled. I told half-truths, because full truths would kill. Then?" Blood roared in Robert's ears, louder than storm or memory. Jon Snow, that quiet, watchful boy in Winterfell's yard. Eddard's bastard, as lean and dark as a Stark should be. Yet he wielded his sword like a dancer, eyes bright with something neither northern bleakness nor southern ease could name. Robert remembered how the lad had bowed shyly on the king's progress, cheeks mottled with snow pink, and how Lyanna's laughter had sounded when she'd stolen past him in Winter Gardens long ago. "Speak," Robert commanded. Ned's voice shook. "Jon is not my son. He is Lyanna's." Robert felt the world lurch as though the red keep itself shifted atop Aegon's hill. "You lie," he whispered. "I swore an oath at her bedside," Ned said. "When I found her in the Tower of Joy, she lay in blood and rose petals. She pressed our hands together and begged me to protect her child, for she feared you would kill him, believing him Rhaegar's heir. I swore by ice and fire both. Jon is her son and aye, Rhaegar's blood flows in him. Aye." Thunder punched the night. Robert stared at his friend and tasted ashes. All the hatred he had nursed for Rhaegar Targaryen, all the songs sung of the usurper's wrath, withered in the single heartbeat he imagined Lyanna dying, trusting the wolf to shield a dragonling from the stag's antlers. He felt suddenly small, a drunkard king drowning under layers of guilt and rust, while Lyanna had died alone and terrified, trusting the wrong men. "Why now?" he croaked. "Because lies fester," Ned said, "and the realm teeters on their rot. Because your wounds showed how narrowly the realm escaped a war of succession we are not strong enough to fight. And because you still love her. Namasi. Love." The word flayed open old bone-deep scars. Robert closed his eyes, saw Lyanna again, fearless, teasing, alive. Then he saw Jon, quiet, solitary, honorable without pageantry, in a snowbound courtyard, arm steady as he loosed an arrow that found its mark dead center. Something inside Robert stirred, equal parts longing and shame. "I would have killed the babe," he admitted, voice raw, "for the crime of his father." "You did not," Ned said. "I did." The admission shattered decades of certainties. Robert opened his eyes to storm-lit dark. "Where is the boy now?" "At Castle Black. He took the black with your blessing, as you recall." Robert barked a laugh, half mad with wonder. "A bastard of my sister, pledged to guard a realm that would despise him if it knew. 7 hells, Ned, you keep secrets like Manderley keeps pies." Pycelle chose that moment to shuffle in, bearing fresh bandages. But one look at the king's face sent the old maester fleeing without word. When the door shut, Robert leaned forward, every motion agony. "What if..." "Listen to me, Ned. What if I claimed the boy as my heir? Not Targaryen heir or Stark bastard, but mine. I will name him Jon Baratheon. Son of Lyanna, whom I love true." Ned's breath caught. "Stannis, Renly, will bark and bite, but I remain king until my heart stops. They will bend or break." Robert's voice grew steadier, vision focusing on a path he had never dared to dream. "Jon has the blood of kings twice over. Dragon and stag through Lyanna and me by oath, if not by seed. He is the bridge our sundered realm needs." "Nennerwam." Ned hesitated. "The Lannisters will not yield lightly. I will give Cersei leave to return to Casterly Rock with her cubs. I tire of her games. His fist tightened, knuckles whitening beneath the scabs. "Let her lie and prowl the Westerlands far from my court." Rain softened to a hush. Ned Stark looked on his king, the friend he had followed through rebellion and ruin, and nodded once. "Then we must move swiftly, before whispers outrun our ravens." Robert grinned through the ache, sudden as sunrise. "Send my fastest riders north at dawn. Tell Lord Commander Mormont the king commands Jon Snow to attend him in King's Landing. And Ned, keep the letters sealed with your own hand. The wall breeds crows, who love gossip more than flight." North of the Neck, dawn spilled pale and chill over the snow-spangled roofs of Castle Black. Jon Snow rolled from a straw mattress, muscles stiff from drill, and listened to the muted calls of stewards in the yard. Summer was dying early. Hoarfrost silvered every breath. Ghost padded behind him, red eyes bright amid drifting mist, and nudged Jon's hand with a cold nose. Outside, new recruits from Eastwatch fumbled with practice spears as Sir Alizer Thorne's voice cracked like a whip. Jon donned black wool and leather, thumb brushing the small tear at his sleeve where Grin's clumsy sword had snagged during the morning spar. 2 days passed. He strode past the rookery stair, mind already mapping the day's tasks, when a raven's croak, sharp, insistent, echoed through the tower. Othel Yarwick pushed open the rookery door, face ashen beneath sooty beard. "Snow," he called. Jon climbed. The raven sat on the perch, black wings flecked with white. A gray ribbon bound its leg, the wax unbroken. Old Maester Aemon pressed the message into Jon's hand with trembling fingers. "For you alone," he said. Jon hesitated, cracked the seal, and read. Words leapt like flames. "The king commands your presence in King's Landing. Travel under guard, by order of Eddard Stark, hand of the king. Long live his grace Robert Baratheon." His heartbeat thundered. The wall's chill seemed to fade beneath a rush of blood. He snatched breath. Why would the king summon a lowly steward of the Night's Watch? Ned Stark would never tear a man from his vows lightly. Fear and wonder tangled as he folded the parchment and met Maester Aemon's blind gaze. "The realm stirs," the ancient Targaryen murmured, as though glimpsing truth through clouded eyes. "Change rides those words, Jon." Cersei Lannister paced the queen's solar, velvet skirts whispering like adders. Robert's survival had torn her careful tapestry to ribbons. Joffrey sulked on a cushioned chair, hunting knife carving idle grooves into the armrest. Myrcella and Tommen clutched books they did not read, eyes darting to the door with every footfall beyond. When the royal steward arrived, Cersei snatched his parchment before he bowed. She scanned Robert's summons, "Bring the children to throne room at midday for an announcement of lineage." Her fingers tightened, nails leaving crescent moons in the wax where the stag-pierced crown. She dismissed the steward with a look that froze his marrow. Alone, she stared at her reflection in a golden mirror. Saw her own green eyes, Jaime's eyes in the children. Staring back, they had built their future on secrets, believing themselves cleverer than crowns and swords. Now Robert threatened it all with a boar's tusk and a northerner's whispers. Cersei raised the parchment to the flame of a scented candle and watched it curl into black lace. She would not yield her cubs to a bastard wolf pup. If the stag charged, the lioness would draw blood. Stannis Baratheon's heels clicked through the hall of painted table on Dragonstone. The storm outside rattled shutters, but within the gloomy chamber, the painted coastlines glimmered under lantern light. Sapphire seas, emerald forests, coiled red depths around Valeria. At the table's head, the slender priestess Melisandre watched him with eyes like freshly spilled wine. "The king lives," Stannis said, voice as flint as the keep's walls, "and plots to name a bastard his heir." Melisandre's smile curved like a scythe. "In the flames I saw a boy with a direwolf's shadow. The scent of kingship clung to him like smoke. Perhaps he is Azor Ahai reborn." Stannis slammed a palm on painted wood. "Prophecies are weed smoke. Law is stone. The king has 2 true brothers, myself and Renly, before any bastard has claim. But doubt wormed beneath his sternum. Robert might place his crown where he wished while breath remained. Stannis turned to the storm, lashing narrow windows. The realm, already fractious, could be plunged into chaos by a single quill stroke. Yet law was not mere parchment. It was the spine of order. If Robert abandoned it, Stannis would uphold it himself, even against his brother's will. Renly Baratheon lounged upon a cushioned chaise in the rose-scented garden of Maker's Holdfast, Loras Tyrell at his side. A letter from Sir Lancel had warned of impending proclamation, and Renly's easy smile slipped like silk from damp hands. If Robert names Eddard's bastard heir, Renly mused, lords great and small shall blink like owls. Then flutter whichever way the winds of power blow. Storm's End will not sit idle under Stannis' claim, nor Highgarden under mine. Loras offered a grape that Renly forgot to taste. You have friends, the Knight of Flowers murmured. More than Stannis, more than a northern wolf pup. House Tyrell stands ready. Renly's gaze drifted upward to the Red Keep's towers, where banners snapped against clean blue. He imagined a crown of antlers tempered by roses, a realm smiling under summer's warmth. Yet politics was a viper pit. Robert's sudden affection for a bastard threatened to loose a dozen fanged coils. Hastily, Renly began composing names. Mace Tyrell, Mathis Rowan, Randall Tarley. Lords who might rally under a banner of youth and charm instead of dour duty. In Winterfell's Godswood, Robb Stark knelt before the heart tree, bronze leaves trembling in dusk's breeze. Bran beside him glanced upward at the bleached weirwood face, its red sap tears drying in early frost. A raven from Castle Black had brought word of Jon's summons, and Robb felt the yard beneath him shift like river ice. He must go, Robb whispered. Ay, Bran said. But I dreamt of walls falling and snow turning to ash. Robb placed a hand on his brother's shoulder, though fear gnawed his own belly. The North had endured countless winters, yet an unease coiled now, a sense that distant storms would rake every holdfast. He prayed to the old gods for Jon's safety, but the rustling leaves answered with secrets only children of the forest could comprehend. The royal procession wound through the muddy yards at the foot of the wall. Sir Jeremy Ricker commanded 200 men, banners snapping black and gold in the glacial wind, torches shedding fiery petals onto trampled snow. Jon stood before Lord Commander Mormont, cloak flapping around thin shoulders. You ride south on the morrow, Mormont said, expression unreadable beneath snow-whitened brows. Your vows remain, but the king's command is iron. I expect you back when your duty is done. He paused. And you will return, Jon Snow. The wall needs men of honor. Then I will say, I will not forsake my brothers, Jon answered, though a storm of doubt raged inside him. Ghost pressed against his leg, silent reassurance. That night, Jon walked the dizzying heights of the wall, wind keening like wolves. Beyond black horizon, the haunted forest rolled in endless ripples, secrets older than kingdoms slumbering beneath its boughs. He could not imagine swapping this wild vastness for the stench of southern streets, yet the king's summons tugged like a lodestone. Somewhere beneath the swirl of uncertainty, a flicker of excitement sparked. A chance to see his father again, perhaps even prove himself worthy of the Stark name. He did not yet dream of crowns. Robert Baratheon rose at dawn, refusing the chair litter. He donned brigandine over fresh bandages, the weight of iron warming his blood. When Ned entered, Robert already stood before a mirror of polished obsidian, fastening the black stag cloak. Stormy light from the narrow window rimmed his silhouette in silver. I feel younger this morning, Robert declared. Ace though battles yet to win stir marrow too long idle. Ned eyed the king's pallor but said only, the small council meets at noon. Varys has coaxed half the realm's ears into that chamber. Let them come, Robert growled. I will speak plain. Down crumbling steps they went, every valet and guard they passed, staring as at a revenant. The throne room yawned, cavernous in damp dawn. Bronze doors echoed shut behind them. Robert gazed upon the iron throne, forged of enemy blades, its jagged spires clutching the vaulted shadows like skeletal claws. He felt its magnet pull, not with longing but loathing. That throne had devoured Eris, now tried to devour him in lethargy and wine. He would not let it swallow Jon. At midday, lords bold and cautious filtered into the hall. Pettier Baelish with mockingbird pin glinting, Varys fluttering in lavender robes, Renly grinning like sunlight, Grand Maester Pycelle huffing behind beard, even Sir Barristan Selmy in white cloak, stiff as honor. The queen arrived last, golden as rimfire. Children in tow, the embodiment of Lannister supremacy. Robert's gaze locked on Joffrey. Fair hair, petulant eyes, then drifted to Myrcella and Tommen. Both soft, sweet, and damned by lineage, not theirs to choose. Regret flickered, but he let it go. Better living lions in the west than dead ones beneath this roof. He rose. Murmurs died. "My lords and ladies," Robert began, voice echoing from marble to chandeliers. "The gods spared me the boar's tusk, granting time to mend both body and realm. In that twilight I pondered legacy, justice, and the blood that binds lords to small folk." Eyes flicked between gold and wolf, stag and spider. Robert's gaze swept them like tide. "I have learned hard truths about those I trusted, truths I will reveal in due course. But first, understand this. My crown is not a bauble passed like a purse. It is burden, forged in rebellion's flame. To bear it after me, I must name one worthy." Cersei's knuckles whitened on Joffrey's shoulder. "I, Robert of House Baratheon, burst of my name, King of the Andals, Rhoynar, and the First Men, do hereby name as my lawful heir, Jon of House Stark, called Snow, natural son of my beloved Lyanna Stark, henceforth legitimated and granted all rights and honors of House Baratheon. From this day he shall be styled Prince of Dragonstone." First, the hall erupted. Shock, outrage, gasps braided with whispers thicker than incense smoke. Cersei's scream of protest cut through the tumult like a cleaver through meat. Joffrey surged forward, face twisted, but Sir Barristan's white-gloved hand gripped the prince's shoulder with gentle strength. Robert raised a mailed fist. Silence shuddered back. "The realm's stability demands truth. My so-called children with Queen Cersei are born of her incestuous liaison with her brother Sir Jaime Lannister." He flung a scroll across the floor. It skittered toward Pycelle. Hair, eyes, blood, proof enough for any who still doubt. Pycelle bent with audible creaks to retrieve it. Tywin was not present, but the lion's shadow loomed in every mind. Robert pressed on. "I give Cersei and her offspring safe passage to Casterly Rock, there to dwell unmolested so long as they raise no banners against the crown. Should they refuse, the law shall judge them." Cersei's lips curled. "You think House Lannister will bend knee to this farce? A bastard raised above lions and dragons alike?" Robert's smile was cold iron. "Gold bends easier than it boasts. Choose wisely." Renly's face was frozen cordiality. Stannis' absence loomed like a drawn bow. Varys fluttered a fan, eyes inscrutable. Littlefinger's smirk betrayed dawning calculations. Robert cared not. The first stone had been cast, rolling now toward a destiny none could halt. Jon Snow's party crossed the last river, under lowering skies, hooves churning gray water. Nights grew shorter, yet the air south of Winterfell felt almost mild. Along the King's Road, peasant faces peered from crooked huts, eyes wide at the black cloaks and royal banners. Jon rode beside Ser Yaremy, heart split between doubt and thrill. Ravens had already raced ahead. So rumor surely preceded them. Why the king summoned a bastard brother of the Night's Watch remained mystery to all. At twilight, the shapes of Winterfell's granite towers rose like familiar guardians. Ghost loped ahead, white against dusk. And Jon's chest tightened seeing hearth smoke spiral from the broken keep that had birthed his childhood dreams and uncertainties. He dismounted near the Godswood gate. Robb emerged, cloak of gray wool trimmed in white, eyes shining. No time for long embraces. The escort pressed, knowing King's business was as fleeting as morning dew. Yet Robb gripped Jon's forearm in the old warrior's clasp, and in that contact passed every unsaid brotherly promise: strength, loyalty, pride. No feast greeted them, only hastily drawn stew and bread at the high table. Yet Jon savored each bite like harvest after famine. Maester Luwin pressed a wrapped bundle into his hands. Letters from Lord Eddard. Words Jon could read only by candle once back on the road. He did not open them yet, fearing what they might demand of him. In the pre-dawn hush, he knelt before the heart tree, ghosts of old vows whispering through the leaves. "Father, brothers, old gods," he murmured. "I walk a path lit by torches I cannot see. Guide me." The weirwood, patient as eons, shed a scarlet leaf that landed on Ghost's muzzle before drifting into the pool. Jon rose, heart steadied. Tywin Lannister read the Raven's letter thrice beneath the weeping candelabra of his study. Each reading carved deeper canyon into his immovable mask. When at last he set the parchment on polished oak, his green eyes gleamed like distant forges. He dismissed the messenger, cracked a seed between teeth, and turned to the map splayed beneath his forearms. Lines of trade, roots of gold and grain, the pulse of kingdoms, all lay beneath his gaze. The stag had gored the lion, but lions were slow to bleed out. Tywin slid carved blocks representing forces at Casterly Rock, Crakehall, Ashmark. He weighed oaths against pride, hostage against profit. Robert's offer of safe passage for Cersei and the children was an insult. A velvet glove hiding broken bones. Yet outright war could shatter Lannister coffers for generations. He summoned Sir Kevan with a bell's cold chime and began dictating letters. One to Lord Mace Tyrell, one to the Iron Bank of Bravos, another to Dorne, setting golden wheels turning beneath the stad's shadow. Let Robert have his bastard prince. House Lannister would guard its own. Far to the east, in the free city of Pentos, a dragon queen listened as a spice lord read soft rumors. A western king still lives, a wolf's bastard summoned south, a lioness dethroned. Daenerys Targaryen closed her eyes against the harbor's glitter. If a new heir ruled Westeros, her path home might twist again. She pressed a palm to her belly. Life stirred, faint as butterfly wings, and whispered to the unborn child of storms and stars that someday they would cross the narrow sea together. But that is a tale yet to come. On the merchant ship Blushing Maiden, Stannis Baratheon clenched the rail as Dragonstone receded behind hiss of foam and gull cry. He sailed not to King's Landing but to Storm's End, intent on gathering men loyal to law, not whim. Melisandre stood near, hair streaming ember-bright dot. "The boy in your brother's dream will shake the world," she said. Stannis glared at the Red Woman. "I will break before I bend to prophecy, yet break I will not." Melisandre's smile revealed nothing. "Azor Ahai may be born in frost as well as flame. Your part is yet unwritten." Stannis snorted and turned his face eastward, where dawn bruised the horizon. Robert Baratheon strode the Tower of the Hand's high balcony that night, wind-tugging stag-black cloak. Below, King's Landing's lights shimmered like scattered coin. Ned joined him, silent, and they stood shoulder to shoulder for the first time in days, boyhood ghosts between them. "Old friend," Robert said, "I feel as though I have unsheathed a blade left to rust too long. The edge is nicked, but still sharp." Ned nodded toward the city. "Edges cut both wielder and foe. Keep a steady hand." Robert's laugh boomed into the dark. "With you beside me, I will. We will forge a realm our children need not fear." Somewhere beyond the hills, a warhorn's low note echoed. A dusk herdsman calling sheep, or omen carried on wind. Robert leaned on the parapet, dreaming of the moment Jon would step through the throne room's doors, wolf pelt on shoulders, eyes bright with northern snow and dragonfire. The sight would be Lyanna's spirit returned in living form. He would give the boy a crown, a kingdom, perhaps the chance to mend all that Robert himself had broken. He wondered whether Jon would forgive him. Wind swept through, carrying the faint sound of sea and forge and distant ravens. Robert closed his eyes, and the memory of Lyanna's laughter warmed him more than wine. The game had only begun, Yet already the pieces moved faster than even kings could control. But Robert felt alive. Truly alive. For the first time since the Trident's waters ran red. And that, he thought, was worth any storm the morrow might bring. Kemnin. The summer storm that had drenched the city earlier in the night lingered as a warm mist, curling off roof tiles and lantern posts like breath from a slumbering giant. In the bowels of the mud gate, a restless hush replaced the usual tavern clamor. Word had flown ahead of the royal ravens that the king's newest heir rode south under guard. Men drank in sullen clumps, muttering wagers about bastards with crowns and what color cloaks the gold cloaks would put on next. Even whores found fewer takers than rumors that evening, and more than one smuggler's skiff hunkered beneath the bridge pilings, waiting to see which banner might fly come dawn. Across the city, in the Red Keep's shadowed kitchens, Tamar the head baker shaped 36 honeyed stag bread loaves under the watch of 2 silent gold cloaks. Tamar had been told the prince that wasn't a prince liked sweet bread, though no one could say if the wolf-born boy had eaten a crust of honey in his life. The baker obeyed. Politics tasted like coin to men who fed courts. Above him, spiral stairs carried scurrying servants toward the grand hall, where Eddard Stark rehearsed every step the escort would take from the gate to Maegor's Holdfast. Counting blades, counting corners, counting quarrel could change destinies. Sir Barristan walked the route with him, torch smoke staining new patterns on the Kingsguard's snowy cloak. Robert had ordered the walls inside the throne room scraped of once gaudy tapestries, until only bare stone remained, claiming he wished to smell cold rock instead of scented silks. He spent the damp hours marching up and down its length, testing the wound's resilience with every stride. Each footfall echoed like hammer on anvil, steady, deliberate. When Ned tried to steer him back to his bed, Robert only laughed. The forge stays hot. Stark. If the steel twists, I want to feel it in my bones before the whole sword snaps. By the 5th circuit, even the king's grin looked honed. In the tower beside the maiden vault, Cersei Lannister pinned her hair with jade combs. 3 strokes to the left, 3 to the right, until the mirror's golden frame showed not so much a queen as a blade disguised in silk. Joffrey paced behind her like a caged manticore, face mottled scarlet. "He cannot do this," the boy hissed for the 100th time. "He cannot steal what is mine." "He can," Cersei answered, voice soft enough to caress and flay at once. "A king's word is sword and seal together." She brushed a thumb along Joff's jaw, catching the tremor beneath skin proud as polished bronze. "But blades may break. If Robert dares parade a wolf pup through the streets, I shall show the realm which cub has the sharper teeth." She pressed a ring into Joffrey's palm, lion wrought in red gold, mane studded with garnets. "If the moment calls, speak with this, not words." Joffrey closed fingers around the ring until blood beaded. He stared at his mother's reflection, and thought how pleasant it would be to see wolf blood bubble the same way. Far below the grander chambers, Littlefinger's padded slippers whispered along a narrow passage behind the hall of small council. A single shaded candle glowed between his fingers and cast his own shadow ahead of him, tall and thin, along damp stone. Beside him the spider glided, feet silent, hands folded like a praying septons. Their voices never rose above breath. Whispers say Tywin looks west, Varys murmured. Gold trains already move through the foothills under triple guard. Gold always travels under guard, Littlefinger replied. It is the direction the coin points when it arrives that matters. He tapped the candle's base. My birds tell me Lord Rowan and Lord Tarley have been visited by Renly's envoys. Pity how easily love can be bought with tourneys and smiles. And what of your own love, my lord? Varys asked. You have long kept a torch for Catelyn Stark. A torch can become a wildfire given the right breath. Pettier Belish's lips curled. And you have always kept a torch for the realm itself, or so you claim. Yet neither of us truly wish to see it burn, do we? Chaos is a ladder, not an inferno. He sniffed the musty air. But sometimes the ladder must wobble to remind climbers how far they might fall. Varys' eyelids fluttered in a half bow. Let us pray none of us discovers our rung missing." They parted at the hidden stair. Littlefinger, to oversee the city watch stipend increases he had engineered that morning, Varys to seed a few last rumors in the ears of faithless scribes. By dawn the small folk would debate whether the young wolf wore dragon scales beneath his cloak, and whether the king's new hand might drown King's Landing in snow so thick it would snuff every baker's oven. Lice sprouted faster in warm air, and this night's mist was unseasonably warm. 200 leagues north, Jon Snow guided a rangy gelding through the Ashford crossroads, raindrops flicking from the horse's mane. Sir Jeremy Ricker rode ahead, while 4 black brothers flanked the rear. Their fresh recruits, wise to the king's directive, had begun treating Jon with awkward half-deference, as if any moment a hidden crown might pop from his saddlebags. Jon resented the hush that always followed when he dismounted, the way men's eyes traced him as though reading heraldry stitched to invisible silk. He longed for the simple bruises of sparring yard and the straight answers of the walls, bitter winds. Sleep came fitful each camp. Nor did Ghost rest easy. The direwolf paced the perimeter until dawn, hackles rising whenever strangers' fires winked in the distance. One rainy dusk Jon wakened to see the white wolf staring into shadows beyond the tree line. Fur bristling, a rumble in its throat like grinding ice. Nothing moved where Ghost fixed his gaze, yet Jon could not shake the sense of being measured by eyes older than the kingdom whose throne beckoned him. On the morning of the 4th day, they crested a low ridge, and the King's Road unfurled south like a scar. Below, a caravan of 3 wagons lay overturned, oxen slain where they fell, their bellies opened. Burned crates filled bolts of reach linen, now soaked crimson by rain and blood. Ricker's men fanned out, swords drawn. Jon crouched beside a corpse. A driver, throat slashed, eyes clouded, but a smile frozen on his lips. The body still steamed. The raiders had fled less than an hour before. Jon's knuckles whitened on the hilt of Longclaw. Rage came swift and cold. These men or creatures had struck unarmed traders miles from any holdfast, then melted into woods grown thick with summer. He wanted to track them, to meet justice. Yet the king's summons pressed like weight across his shoulders. Duty lay south, not in the trackless green. He rose and caught Sir Jeremy's stare. Neither spoke. At last Ricker gave the order to ride on. Justice, Jon told himself, can wait until I hold power enough to wield it truly. Still, he turned once before leaving the glade, and in the desolate hush, a raven alighted on a wagon's broken spoke. Its black eyes met his, and Jon felt the world tilt. A whisper he could not hear brushing his thoughts. Ghost growled low. The raven croaked, took wing, and vanished into the gray. Storm's End loomed above crashing waves like an ancient fist raised against cloud-curdled sky. Stannis Baratheon reached its courtyard by wind-tattered sail at sunset, boots scraping the age-rounded stones that had once known Argilac, the arrogant, and the young conqueror Aegon. Every man-at-arms bowed stiffly. Respect for Stannis came hard-won and hard-shown, like anything planted in chalky earth. Inside the main hall, rows of gnarled torches flared as if eager to greet a rightful lord returned. Maester Pylus met him at the dais. Storm's End stands ready, my lord. The garrison numbers 800 spears, the fleet 70 sail. Supplies. Not enough, Stannis cut in, voice wind rough. They never are. He scanned vaulted beams. Send riders to Tarth and the Marcher Lords. Tell them the rightful succession is in peril. By law I am heir, and law must hold. Pylus hesitated, lips parting around a sentence aborted by caution. Stannis saw and scowled. Speak. My lord, rumors reach even these walls. They say the boy may hold dragon blood. Dragon tales. Stannis stalked to the ancestral shield of Storm's End, the stag crowned upon a black field. He brushed dust from its rim. No babe of Rhaegar takes what is mine by justice. Call banners. We will remind the realm what true-born means. Above their heads wind moaned in rafters, and somewhere outside a wave hurled itself against the curtain wall with cannon thunder force. Melisandre drifted in from the shadows then, unseen until her red silks pooled at Stannis' elbow. When the time comes, you must be the sword in the darkness. she whispered. But even the sharpest blade requires a furnace to temper it. Fires grow hotter. Stannis did not flinch. Then let them burn. I shall stand unscorched. Ben? The Red Woman smiled as if he had spoken a lover's vow. Renly Baratheon broke his fast on a balcony overlooking the city's sloping roofs, a bowl of ripe figs before him, and Loras Tyrell reclining beside the rail in loose linen. The Knight of Flowers plucked a fig and offered it between thumb and forefinger. Renly took a bite, juice running sweet. Below them morning sunlight touched rooftops like a gentle hand, but Renly's thoughts clanged like tourney armor. If I ride tonight, he mused, mouth full, I could reach Highgarden before Maester Gorman finishes composing his third sonnet to my brother's bastard. Mace would feast me, Randall Tarley would scowl, and half the South would remember why they prefer green summers to gray winters. Host means hostages, Loras replied. Take their love before Stannis or Robert forces their swords. A smiling king will always beat a scowling one, especially if that king wears roses. Renly chuckled, licking juice from his lip. And how will the realm's new northern prince respond to roses, do you think? Loras pushed a curl from his eyes. Pray he is as green as the gossip says. If he falters even once, fields of grain will bend toward the stronger sun. Renly leaned against warm stone. He could picture the boy. Somber northerner, straight-backed with a direwolf at heel, uncertain amid southern scents. He would wield honor as a child might heft a warhammer, awkward and undersized. Renly felt a tremor of pity. Pity, however, was not strategy. Write to your father, he told Loras. We may need to plant seeds before winter after all. On a vine-wrapped terrace outside the Red Keep's library, Eddard Stark reread the letter Luwin had sent south by Swift Raven, reporting Jones' departure from Winterfell. Ned traced each word as if the maester's ink were lifeblood seeping through parchment. He pictured his boy. No, his nephew, leaning forward in saddle, eyes narrowing at each new mile. Would Jon hate him for a lifetime of lies? He thought of Lyanna's voice, fading, a last plea inside tower walls, stained by dying roses. Protect him, Ned. Promise me. The promise had torn flesh and bone these 17 years. Soon, it would tear the world entire. Footsteps sounded. Ned looked up as Arya slipped onto the terrace, hair tangled, breeches muddy from some escapade. Father, she said between quick breaths. Cerilin caught me sparring with Micah again. He says he'll whip the next stable boy who lends me a wooden sword. Ned laid the letter aside and knelt to brush grit from her cheek. Cerilin's tongue may be silent, but his eyes miss little. Best not test him. Arya's scowl deepened. Why can't I fight? Bran practiced archery every day, and Rob's learning command, and Jon. She bit her lip. Jon's gone, and no one tells me why. Ned's chest tightened. Secrets bred more wounds than daggers. Yet Arya was Lyanna's daughter in stubborn spirit as much as his own. He cupped her chin. Jon rides south because the king needs him. In time you will learn more, I swear. Swear like you swear to the gods. Arya met his gaze with fierce gray eyes that mirrored his father's and his father's before him. Or swear like nobles swear in court? He huffed a tired laugh. The first. And I keep my god's oaths. Oh. She nodded, believing, and slipped a hand into his. Together they watched gulls wheel over the Blackwater rush, white against sky. Ned wondered which storm would break first. The one in his daughter's heart, the one gathering beyond the sea, or the one he himself had conjured by daring to speak truth. 3 days' ride east of Maidenpool, Tywin Lannister's outriders halted when a flock of crows burst from a cornfield. Moments later the field itself erupted, a ragged band of outlaws in piecemeal mail, waving black-hafted spears with lion claws nailed to their shafts. At their lead towered a brute in half a set of Kingsguard plate, white enamel flaking like old scabs. He bellowed, "A lion for a day," and charged. The Gold Road's escort never faltered. 50 Lannister guards lowered lances and met the rush head-on. In the first heartbeat, 5 rebels went down transfixed, blood-spraying golden helms. But the brute's stolen armor turned 2 spear points, and his spiked mace crushed a guard's helm like ripe melon. Men screamed, horses reared, grain bent beneath ironclad hooves. Somewhere a torch hit trampled straw and flames whooshed skyward, crackling hotter than battle cries. Tywin, unarmored beside his litter, watched the clash with expression carved from mountain granite. He counted the rebels' banners. None. Rabble then, stirred by rumor or coin. When his captain dragged the armored brute before him, helm split, blood dribbling down bleached breastplate. Tywin asked one question. "Who pays you?" The man spat a tooth, grinning through pulp. "Stags," he croaked before a sword opened his throat. Tywin wiped speckled crimson from his cheek. "Clean this mess," he told Sir Kevin. "Fire and rumor march together. We shall meet both before they reach the rock." He climbed into his litter and pulled shut the heavy curtain, the better to draft letters as hooves resumed their rhythm. Steel could be sharpened, tongues must be bought or severed. Night smothered the King's Road beneath clouds thick as wet wool when Joan's column reached the disused holdfast of Hayhold. Mossy walls leaned like old men in silent council. They pitched camp within the outer yard, fires guttering in brick hearths left cold since summer's first moon. Jon cleaned Longclaw's edge, then wandered the quiet yard, thoughts restless. Inside one half-collapsed smithy he found racks of rust-eaten helmets, visors fused by time. A blacksmith's anvil sprouted mushrooms where sparks once flew. Ghost padded among fallen rafters, sniffing, hackles lifting. Jon knelt and pressed palm to the ground. The stone felt oddly warm despite the chill. He heard nothing but the wind until faint footfalls crunched behind him. He rose, hand on sword, but it was only Maester Harmune, the escort's healer, lamp held before him. "Can't sleep either?" the Maester asked. Jon sheathed Longclaw. "Dreams don't rest, nor wolves." Harmune inspected a cracked helm whose cheekplate bore the faded device of House Massey. "I served at Storm's End as a boy squire years ago," he said. "War leaves bones that outlive memory. Perhaps your summons aims to bury war before it starts." "Mendisano, or exhume older bones," Jon muttered. The Maester peered at him. "Whatever the king wants, know this. Truths are hammers. They break lies but can break bones too if swung hard. Guard your ribs, Prince, if that be your fate." Jon did not answer. A breath of wind stirred ashes in the old forge, sending sparks of gray skittering across the floor like mice. Ghost bared his teeth at nothing Jon could see. The night pressed close, thick with portents. In the king's solar, a single lantern haloed Robert's broad shoulders as he bent over a cask of war arrows personally selected by Sir Barristan. Ned sat across the table, rereading dispatches from the Black Cells. 2 gold cloaks arrested for spreading tales of dragons hatched in the Red Keep's undercrypts. 1 baker flogged for seeding his loaves in the shape of a deer wolf's head. Ned handed the parchments to Robert without comment. The king skimmed them, grimaced. "Fools chasing shadows. Shadows kill when men believe in them," Ned said. Robert poured himself half a horn of cider, then pushed the flask toward Ned, who shook his head. "Are you ever tempted?" Robert mused after a swallow. "To ride north, leave crowns behind, hunt boar and elk until the snows swallow us both?" "Often," Ned said. "But oaths weigh heavier than wishbones." "And what of your oath to Jon?" "My oath to Lyanna," Ned corrected. "I pray we will not make mockery of it soon." Robert's eyes shone in lantern glow, copper and sorrow. "I mean to honor her. Ice and fire made something new in that boy, Ned. Stark steel and Targaryen wildfire. Perhaps that is what this broken realm needs. Steel to stand, fire to forge. Then shall." Ned thought of Bran's dream of walls falling. He nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but steel can shatter in untrained hands. Fire can burn the innocent. We must guide him." Robert smiled tiredly. "That task I leave to you, old friend. Gods know I was never good at teaching." Outside, the solar thunder grumbled low, though no lightning flashed. The storm had slipped away, yet its growl lingered. Ned's shoulders prickled. Somewhere fate sharpened new teeth. The sun stood half a spear above the eastern rooftops when Jon Snow finally glimpsed King's Landing. From the ridge north of the Blackwater, the city appeared chaotic. a patchwork of crimson roof tiles, greening copper domes, and crooked whitewashed walls, hugging the river's curve. The red keep speared the sky at its eastern tip, red rock glittering where early light struck. Bell towers pealed, and the distant rumble of thousands of lives drifted like surf. Jon drew rein, breath-catching. Winterfell had felt vast until this. Ghost whined softly, tail lashing. Sir Jeremy guided them onto the descending track. "Best keep your wolf cloaked," he advised. "Small folk fear tales of demon wolves and Kingslayer queens alike." No need to add more. Jon looped a dark blanket over Ghost's back, though the wolf hated it, then pressed onward. By midday they reached the mud gate, passed under its grim portcullis of scarred wood into streets alive with odor, tanneries, cook fires, privy ditch. Sweet perfumes billed from a summer fair kiosk. Eyes turned at sight of black cloaks flanking royal colors. Murmurs followed. Jon kept his gaze level, spine straight. He felt as though walking across a frozen lake, each step echoing. One crack and he would plunge. The escort climbed the hill of Rhaenys, then the hill of Aegon, where the Red Keep awaited behind massive ramparts. Inside the outer yard, Sir Boros Blount received them, stiff as winter branches, and led Jon alone through corridors purged of servants. Not purged. Hidden, Jon realized, glimpsing shadows behind erased archways. They passed under groined ceilings where dragons coiled in sculpture. Candles threw twisting silhouettes ahead of them like heralds. At last a pair of high bronze doors stood before him, worked in relief of stags rampant. 2 Kingsguard planted spears and swung them inward. Heart hammering, Jon stepped into a chamber of raw stone. Torches lined the walls, banners absent, echo amplifying every breath. At its far end loomed the Iron Throne, knife-edged and waiting. Robert Baratheon did not sit in it. The king stood before the dais clad in dark steel chased with gold, hammer at his side. Beside him Ned Stark, gray as history. Sir Barristan and Renly and Lord Varys fanned wider. Cersei and Joffrey lingered halfway down the hall, under escort of Hound and Hound's scowl. Littlefinger leaned on a pillar, expression unreadable. The hall bristled with possibility. Jon swallowed and approached, footsteps the only sound until ear-ringing silence magnified them to thunder. Halfway across the floor he knelt, hand on hilt in lieu of a sword offered. Ghost padded to his flank, head low, eyes scanning. Robert's shadow spilled over them both. "Rise, Jon," the king commanded. Jon stood. Robert studied him. Seeing Rhaegar's high cheekbones echoed. Lyanna's nose, Ned's bearing. Whatever war raged behind the king's eyes stilled into something gentler for a heartbeat. He reached out, pressed a palm to Jon's shoulder. "You look like her," Robert said, softly as a father. Jon dared only nod. Robert straightened, voice loud enough to carry beyond the highest vault. "Lords and ladies, I present to you Jon of House Stark. By my decree, Jon of Houses Baratheon and Stark, first of his name, true-born son of my beloved Lyanna, Prince of Dragonstone and rightful heir to the Iron Throne." A ripple surged through the hall. Gasps, protests, the scrape of steel as Sir Barristan stepped forward, white cloak billowing, and bent knee. "Your Grace, Your Highness." He offered sword, hilt first. Jon stared, shocked, then accepted the blade. Its weight bit his palm like sudden winter. One by one, men knelt. Stannis' seat vacant, but Renly's bowed. Pycelle trembling to both knees, Varys lowering with circumspect grace. Littlefinger dipped barely enough to count, but dipped nonetheless. At the far end, Cersei's face warped between fury and calculation. Joffrey did not kneel. His hand went to his belt where the lion ring glimmered dark red. Robert's gaze pinned him. "Boy." Joffrey's lip curled. "I am no boy. I am prince. And I am king." Robert's words slammed like oaken doors. "Bend. Knee. Now. Now." For a breath Joffrey wavered. Then something in his mother's posture steeled him. He lifted his chin, defiant. The hall vibrated as though holding its breath. Jon's voice cut the hush. surprising even him. "Your Grace," he addressed Robert. "Perhaps Prince Joffrey is struck by shock. The world shifts fast today. Allow him time to find his footing." Robert half turned, brow furrowed. Ned's eyes flicked warning. "Temper." Robert exhaled. "Very well." He motioned to Hound, who gripped Joffrey's shoulder and forced him to kneel. It was enough. Robert retook command. "Kneel or be knelt," he declared. And no one doubted the choice. When silence fell again, Robert signaled, and a steward approached bearing a circlet of dark steel studded with jet, modest beside the Baratheon crown. Robert lifted it, but did not set it on Jon's brow. "Accept this token of your station," he intoned. "Wear it when you choose, carry it when you must. But never forget the weight lies not in metal but in lives." Jon nodded, pulse hammering, and took the circlet. As he did, the candle flames along the walls guttered, as if a breath of unseen wind passed through. Shadows writhed strangely for a heartbeat. Some swore later they saw a direwolf's outline race the stones. Others insisted it was a Wyrm's serpentine coil. Whether omen or trick of light, whispers grew. Robert dismissed the court with sharp clap. "Go. Spread the word. House Baratheon stands stronger than ever." Lords rose. Servants fled to corridors, gossip bursting like fireworks. Jon remained with Ned, Robert, and a handful of guards. Only when the doors thudded shut did Robert sag, hand to ribs. Ned moved to support him. "Too much too soon." "I will drink poppy again tonight," Robert admitted. "But I needed strength today. The lion's den is stirred." Footsteps echoed from side hall. Varys returned, face grave. "Your Grace, the Queen requests private audience." Robert barked a laugh. "A viper requests to sip milk. I think not." He strode toward a side passage. "Let her bite air until her fangs dull." In her chambers, Cersei smashed a jeweled vase against the wall. Myrcella screamed, Tommen cried, and Septa Mordane hustled them from the room. Only once the door shut did Jaime step from behind a tapestry. Golden armor cast reflections that flickered like candle flame across his face. He caught a shard of glass as it skittered underfoot. "So, it has come to this," he said. Cersei turned. Hair wild, eyes glistening. "They humiliated our son. Humiliated me. I will not slink to Casterly Rock meek and ashamed." Jaime weighed the glass shard, then tossed it aside. "I never expected meekness. But there are 200 gold cloaks between us and the gate. 3 times that number of household guards. Even father's coin cannot purchase every blade overnight. We do not need every blade." She hissed. "Only the sharpest. Joffrey ascends or we all fall." Jaime's gaze went to the doorway where Tommen's muffled sobs lingered. He exhaled. "Whatever path you choose, sister, it must be tonight. Or never. Robert will not let us remain under his roof by sunrise." He loosened his sword belt, steel whispering. "Do you truly wish to spill blood? If we draw swords here, none of us may leave alive." Cersei's fingers curled until knuckles paled. She stared at the tapestry's stitched dragons, red on black. "Then we will carve a path through dark. Or burn behind these walls." And now, that same hour, Jon Snow stood on a balcony overlooking the city, circlet tucked inside his cloak. Ed spinning. Ned joined him, silent, and together they watched lights wink across the river. The sky above King's Landing bore no stars. Smoke from chimneys wove a veil that dulled even the moon. Jon at last spoke. "Father." The word caught. "Lord Stark, my lord, why?" Ned folded arms. "Because truth is owed. To you, to her, to the realm. And my vow," Jon whispered, "the Night's Watch. I will ride north and kneel before Lord Commander Mormont myself if need be." Ned's voice cracked. "I'll beg his leave for your broken vow. The wall can spare one man. The realm may not." Jon looked down at the streets. A market fire crackled. sending sparks spiraling. Somewhere far off a dog barked. I never sought crowns, only a place to belong. Ned set a hand on his shoulder. Belonging is forged, not found. We will forge it together. Jon exhaled, tension easing a fraction. And my father? Rhaegar? Ned's breath misted though the night was warm. The world painted him monster. But monsters seldom die singing to women in castles. Know this, he cared for your mother. I cannot say more now. Jon nodded slowly. Questions would come later. For now, dawn's promise glimmered orange on the horizon. It looked like fire and ice together, and for the first time Jon felt both burning and frozen. Two halves of a coin spinning still. Behind them a bell began to toll. Slow, deliberate. Ned frowned. Not the hour bell. As they turned, a column of smoke rose from the direction of the maiden vault. Torches appeared on ramparts. Shouts carried. Jon's hand went to Longclaw. The game, it seemed, had decided to open its next move before the boards were even cleared. In the undercroft below Maegor's holdfast, Varys padded alone through dust-choked air. The bell's toll echoed downward, sending vibrations through brick. He paused before an iron-bound door, no one else living recalled, drew a tiny copper key, and unlocked it. Inside, a small girl hunched over a narrow shaft, listening to voices carried through stone-like secrets by pipe. She turned wide eyes on him. What do they say, little mouse? Varys asked gently. They say the queen means to kill the king. The child breathed. They say the night will drip red. Varys shut the door again, locked it, whispered a thank you through the gap. As he stepped away, dust motes swirled in lantern light. The spider smiled, but sadness etched the curve. So many threads, he murmured. So little silk. Above, the bell continued its somber clang, and in countless chambers men reached for swords or prayers or both. Varys climbed toward the noise, robes swishing, already calculating which rumor to feed and which to starve as dawn bled toward day. The gold road carried Tywin's litter through moon-silvered orchards when a breathless outrider galloped up. Word from the city, my lord, he panted. The king has named a northern bastard his heir. The queen barricades herself with the king's children. Blades drawn. Tywin's eyes flickered, absorbing disaster like a glacier absorbs snow. None melted. Summon every bannerman within 10 days' ride, he ordered. We march on King's Landing. Sir Kevin shifted uneasily. War, brother? Order, Tywin said. He leaned back against plush cushions and closed his eyes. The realm will learn the meaning of it, one way or another. The muffled ring of steel reached Jon Snow, where he raced down a torchlit stair behind Sir Barristan and Ned. Queen's men, a guardsman gasped as they barreled past. Smoke curled under doorways. Ghost bounded ahead, teeth bared. They burst into a gallery to find two Kingsguard clashing, white cloaks stained with ash. Sir Meryn swung at Sir Preston, who blocked. Sparks pinwheeled. Cersei, hair unbound, urged Meryn on with shrill cries while Joffrey skulked behind, blood on his knuckles. A dead courtier lay sprawled near at hand, neck snapped. Jon tightened fingers on Longclaw. Robert stormed in opposite archway, hammer raised. Enough, he roared. The combatants froze. Eyes turned. Robert advanced, smoke swirling round him like storm clouds. Put up your swords, or by the Father, I will put them up your arses. Meryn hesitated. Cersei shrieked. He seeks to steal our crown, Robert. Will you watch our children murdered? Robert glared. No one touches them. They sail at dawn. Now, woman? Stand aside. She did not. Jaime slid from the shadows then. Sword drawn. Face unreadable. Brother, he said. Robert met his twin's bright green gaze. Kingslayer. Tension snapped taut. Every soul felt it. Jaime's sword angled slightly. Robert hefted his hammer. Sir Barristan shifted weight. Ready. Jon's breath locked. He felt as though perched atop a cliff edge. Then Ned stepped forward, voice flint sharp. Jaime, lower your blade or answer to me. Jaime's smile was a twitch. I owe you for the leg you bent on my behalf, Stark. And I owe you for a king you slew, Ned replied. Another heartbeat might have birthed bloodshed. But then a scream echoed down the hall. Myrcella's voice, shrill with terror. Everyone turned as the girl stumbled out, dress smoking, small hands covering her face. Fire had started somewhere behind her. Jaime bolted to sweep her up, forgetting sword. Cersei rushed to Tommen's chamber. Confusion, shattered hostilities. Robert grounded his hammer. Barristan, gather men to quell flames. Ned, secure the princes. Jon waited. Stay with me, Robert finished. Together they hurried after Cersei, Ghost loping silent. In the prince's room, Tommen sobbed while fire licked draperies. Cersei struggled to douse them with a pitcher. Jon darted in, slashed the curtains loose, yanked them to the floor, stomping until only smoke rose. Robert carried Tommen out, coughing. Ghost bounded circles, herding queen and child toward corridor. When the flames subsided and Myrcella soothed, tension returned, banked but unextinguished. Cersei held her children, eyes molten. You see, she hissed at Robert, even stone walls burn. Wolves and stags will tear lions limb from limb. Robert wiped soot from brow. No, Dot. Only those who bear fangs. He reached down, gently pried Tommen from her embrace. The boy clung but yielded. Robert set him beside Myrcella. Then, I will spare them, Cersei. Spare you, if you depart on the morrow. She laughed. Raw. I shall depart, I. But remember, my lion cubs have claws of their own. Pray they do not grow hungry. She swept away with guards, leaving smoke and threat in her wake. Robert exhaled. 7. Save me, Ned. I should have married a fisher girl. Ned managed a grim smile. You still might, if she survives court. Jon gazed at the charred curtains, heart still racing. In minutes he had tasted crown, fury, and fire. The direwolf ghost leaned against his leg, hot breath steady. Somewhere in the depths of the keep, a bell tolled twice more, then fell silent. Dawn painted faint blush along eastern windows. War had not yet come, but its hooves pounded ever nearer through corridors, chambers, and hearts. East of the free cities, on the fringes of the Dothraki Sea, Daenerys Targaryen sat by a low fire as her Khalasar dozed. Jorah Mormont handed her a sealed parchment bearing Westerosi sigil. She broke it, scanning the high Valyrian translation the old knight provided. When she finished, her face lit with wonder and fear. So the usurper lives, she whispered. But his heir is a boy of my own blood. She laid a palm across her swelling belly. The game changes. Across the night plains, a horse screamed. Somewhere winds shifted direction. And in the heart of the Seven Kingdoms, whence tales had once painted dragons extinct, the name Targaryen flickered to life like embers coaxed by breath. Atop the battlements of Storm's End, Stannis watched black clouds claw the horizon. Melisandre stood behind him, hair wicking in salt breeze. One war ends, another begins, she said. Choose your fires, my lord. Stannis jaw set. I choose justice. And justice chooses sacrifice. He glanced at her, eyes like flint in moonlight. Then let it claim me first. Melisandre's smile held sorrow and promise in equal measure. Far below, waves hammered the base of the castle, eternal drums calling soldiers old as stone to arms yet unraised. Jon Snow sat alone in his temporary chamber, long claw across his knees. Exhaustion anchored limbs, yet thoughts wheeled. The circlet lay on the table, dull steel winking candlelight. He touched it, cold to skin. Outside, bells and shouts warred with lullabies and prayers as the city digested a new prince. He wondered how many saw him, truly saw him. Beyond rumor's veil, a soft knock. Ned entered, closing the door behind. He carried a wooden box bound in leather. I meant to give this sooner, he said, setting it before Jon. It was your mother's. Hands trembling, Jon lifted the lid. Inside lay a bundle of blue winter roses, long dead yet perfectly preserved in some alchemist's oil. Their scent faint but unmistakable. A fragrance he remembered only from stories. Beneath the petals, a slim dagger rested, its hilt carved from weirwood bleached bone white, its blade black as moonless sky. Valyrian steel, pattern swirling like frozen smoke. Your aunt wanted her son armed with both beauty and strength, Ned murmured. I can offer only their memories. Use them well. Jon traced the daggers fuller. I will, father, whatever comes. Ned's eyes glossed. He gripped Jon's shoulder once more. Hard. Rest. Tomorrow will carve new paths. He left, and the door latched soft. Jon sank onto the cot. Of the candle's flame shivered as though fearing its own shadow. He closed his eyes, clutching the preserved roses. Fragrance of winter. Hum of distant war horns. Heat of dragon's breath. He felt them all. In that convergence, he sensed a destiny vast as the wall, and deeper than dragonstone veins. Sleep claimed him at last, but dreams did not. They burned. Dawn uncoiled across the city, as though the night itself had bled a faint rose into the sky. From the ramparts of the Red Keep, Jon watched lamplighters extinguish the last guttering flames in the streets below. The air carried a mingled odor of river mist, distant dung fires, and the faintest whisper of the sea. He felt the chill of polished stone beneath his palms, and the heavier, less familiar chill of responsibility coiling behind his ribs. Down in the outer ward, soldiers were drilling, short wooden spears clacking against shields, boots thumping in dusty rhythm. He could hear the sergeant's barked commands, could see the occasional spark of frustration when a new recruit fumbled a turn. It felt strange to measure himself against these men when, only a fortnight earlier, his world had ended at the ragged edge of the wall. There, hardship had been honest. Cold, hunger, ghosts in the forest. Here, comfort and decay lay entwined like lovers, and every kindness seemed barbed. He let ghosts sit at his feet, the direwolf's white fur ruffling in the breeze. Already, ravens circled overhead in tight, restless spirals, as if the sky itself could not decide whether to warm or darken. Behind him, the door hinges sighed. Jon did not need to turn to know Robert Baratheon had joined him. A gouty, broad shadow cast against first light. Sleeping in armor now, are you? Robert asked with a rasping chuckle. The king had traded his brigandine for quilted leather, but the great hammer hung from a strap at his waist all the same. Jon shook his head. Just restless. We've that in common. Robert leaned on the merlon and regarded the east. When I was your age, I didn't know what restlessness meant. All my limbs were restless. Always a hunt, a tourney, a quarrel to settle. Now, when I wake before sunrise, I can't decide if I'm vigorous or dying. His breath came in a low, rueful grunt. Likely both. Jon turned at last, studying the lines in the king's face. Crags eroded by drink and grief and the slow corrosion of rule. Yet beneath, there was still the impression of power. The same force that had once broken Rhaegar on the Trident, the same force that now hovered uncertainly around Jon himself. A long day ahead, Robert said, clapping him on the back. Small council at the first hour. We'll have new banners in the yard by dusk. New banners. Robert's thick brows knitted. If a prince changes, colors change with him. Storm's End has always flown the crowned stag. The North knows the direwolf. Your standard must blend the blood without making lords reach for sick bags. He grinned at his own jest. Your Uncle Benjen's suggestion was half a direwolf and half a stag. Split down the spine. Looked like a butcher's leavings. I thought maybe a stag with wolf's eyes. Men are one. Jon smiled despite himself. I never considered heraldry. You'll consider every bloody thing before long, Robert said, voice blunting at the edges. Coin, corn, harbor fees, quarrels between septa and septon. What to do when some lordling accuses his stepbrother of buggering sheep? It never ends? Silence soaked back in. Beneath them, the drill sergeant bawled an order, and shields lifted. John felt the weight of the king's hand on his shoulder, steady, almost fatherly. If one forgot the tremor deep in the old man's muscles. "I'll do my best," John said. Robert's glance lingered on him. "Your best isn't asked, it's required." Then he released the pressure on John's shoulder, thumb tapping once as if sealing a pact. "Come. Council first, breakfast later. I dislike talking policy on an empty belly, and my belly is emptier than most. But if Tywin reaches the gates before we've hammered terms among ourselves, we'll be caught like hares in a snare." They made their way along a corridor lit in pale gold. Servants froze or bowed. Ghost padded behind, silent as a falling feather. At the far end, the royal guard parted, revealing a staircase that spiraled downward. Steps echoed. Robert descended with surprising vigor, each impact resounding in the hollow shaft. "Where is Lord Tywin?" John asked when they turned onto the bridge that linked to the Tower of the Hand. 2 days' march, maybe 3. Robert's mouth twisted. "Dragons be damned, that man could move an army faster than I move a thought. I nearly wish the boar's tusk had punched deeper. Waking to Tywin atop the city might have simplified life. Surrender or starve. That is a language a soldier understands. But he's not here yet, thank the gods." A sigh. Half a groan. "Which means Varys and Renly will quarrel over parchment, until our quills go blunt." They passed through carved redwood doors into the council chamber. Ned Stark stood already, reviewing a parchment. Renly lounged near the hearth, speaking quietly with Sir Baratheon. Grand Maester Pycelle dozed over a pot of boiling water. Varys, draped in shimmering green silk, greeted them with a fluttering bow. "Your Grace, Your Highness," the eunuch said, lilting the second title with curious warmth. "A pleasure to see the dawn light upon you both." John inclined his head. Robert merely grunted and stomped to his seat. "Sit," he ordered, and councilors obeyed. The meeting began with logistics. Renly outlined the muster of city garrisons, loyalty uncertain, numbers clearer than luster. Varys recounted word of sellsword companies in the narrow sea, willing to sell their axes to any bidder whose coin smelled less like war. Ned Stark spoke of grain stores, how the previous winter had reduced surplus. If conflict spread, they might feed the city only a few moons. Pycelle sniffed sleep from his beard and muttered about debts, impressing none. Through it all, John kept quiet, listening. Each sentence painted a wider view of the realm's fragility, like stepping back from a tapestry until one saw snags long hidden. He noticed Robert's patience thinning thread by thread. When Renly began describing trade disruptions in the Mander Valley, the king raised his hand. "Enough." Robert's voice filled the chamber like a horn's blast. "We'll have battle plans, not farmers' ledgers. When Tywin's outriders appear, I want walls manned, archers stationed, and a raven flying to Storm's End. Stannis must know he's next in line for parley." "Besamda." "Parley, Your Grace?" Varys asked. Robert glowered. "I said parley. I'll talk first, fight if need be. If Tywin bends, we keep cities unburnt. If he breaks, we mount the lion's head above the gate. Either way, the realm sees the stag and the wolf stand together." Pycelle cleared his throat. "Forgive my caution, sire. But should we not also prepare for the possibility that the lion brings allies? Rumor speaks of siege engines purchased in Lannisport, and the houses of the Reach may sway. They'll sway like reeds in wind," Robert snapped. "If Renly does his job." He turned. "Boy, pass the toast." Renly bit off a smile, reached for the rack of bread slices, and served his brother. Not a word of protest. Robert tore a crust, chewed, and pointed the remainder at John Day. "And you, Prince of Dragonstone, why so quiet?" John met his eyes. "Listening, Your Grace. Listening's good. Speaking's also good when you've something to say." Robert swallowed. "What would you do with a lion at the gate?" The council turned to him like hounds scenting game. John felt the heat of scrutiny, but the old lessons Maester Luwin had drilled returned. "Weigh the problem first. I would hold the gate, Your Grace, but keep the bridge open for words. Tywin values power. If he sees united front within and allies gathering without, he may judge victory too costly." Renly laughed lightly. "Hear, hear." spoken like a maester's son. Ned's gaze never left Jon. Robert nodded. Good. Words before swords, but swords ready. Sir Barristan. Zeta fortifications. Lord Varys, continue your messages. If anyone sniffing our kitchens claims Tywin offers gold for open doors, I want their heads on spikes by sunset. End. The meeting continued, but Jon's mind drifted to the faces absent. Cersei locked with her cubs in the Queen's Tower under guard. Jaime confined to quarters until loyalty's determined. Stannis across the storm-swept sea. Daenerys somewhere beyond the narrow horizon. Too many pieces, too many boards. And now. Later that morning, while scribes scuttled like ants across the Red Keep carrying orders, Arya Stark burst into the training yard with a wooden sword tucked into her belt. She wore oversized leather jerkin and breeches dusted at the knees. 2 knights of the guard barred her way toward the tilting rings. I belong here, she insisted. Father's orders? See. She produced a parchment. 1 knight squinted and shifted aside. The other lingered until Jon approached. This is Arya, Jon said. Lord Stark's daughter. Recognition dawned. The guard stepped away muttering apologies. Arya winked at Jon and darted toward the practice dummies. Jon followed at a slower pace, the circlet heavy inside his doublet, long claw heavier at his hip. She swung at straw limbs with determined ferocity, each slap of wood against wicker echoing her breathless curses. Flick, flow, flick again. Jon noted her footwork, awkward but improving since Winterfell. Memory tugged. The day they practiced archery beneath the castle's northern sky, both feeling outside their skins. He came closer, arms crossed. You hold the hilt too tight. She froze, glaring. I don't. You do. Loosen grip, let the wrist move. Then? She scowled but obeyed. When she tried again, her blade twisted smoother. She grinned, wiping sweat on her sleeve. Better? You're still aiming blows like a smith, not a dancer. Syrio says. Her eyes brightened. You remember? I remember. He gestured. Quick flick, then pivot. Pretend I'm attacking, you deflect and step aside. They sparred in slow rhythm at first, her wooden blade bapping against invisible assaults. Ghost lay at edge of the yard, head on paws, red eyes following every turn. As the exercise quickened, Arya laughed. Jon allowed himself a grin. For a moment they were only siblings again. A court herald interrupted, arriving short of breath. Your Highness, he said, bowing. Lord Tywin's envoys approach the city gates under banner of parley. The king requests your presence. Jon nodded. I'll come. He turned to Arya, lowering his voice. You should return to your chambers. Why? I want to watch. This isn't a mummer show. He softened. Please. She huffed, but relented, gathering her sword. He watched her stride off before following the herald. Gun? Atop the gate of the gods, Robert stood in mail and leather, helm under his arm, hammer planted. Renly, Ned, and Sir Barristan lined the parapets. Jon joined them, eyes straining beyond the moat to the east. Dust plumes marked approaching riders. Even at distance, the Lannister crimson and gold blazed bright. The envoy arrived. 6 riders, 2 bearing white flags, 1 toting a scroll heavy with ribbons. The lead, Ser Adam Marbrand, dismounted with lissom grace, removed helm, and called in ringing voice, Lions come in peace, by leave of the hand and the king. In peace, Robert echoed, amusement roughening his tone. Then let the lions approach. Guards raised the portcullis halfway. Marbrand and a single squire entered the outer barbican. There, Robert descended to meet them with Jon and Ned at either side. Marbrand bowed. His lordship Tywin Lannister sends greeting and offers terms. Terms already? Robert scoffed. Your lord marches swift. Marbrand's face betrayed mild irritation. He marches to guard his kin, your grace. He will not see them exiled. Not exiled, Robert corrected. Resettled. He waved a hand. Let's hear the terms. The knight unrolled scroll. Lord Tywin proposes that Princess Myrcella be betrothed to His Highness Prince Jon at once, thereby uniting houses Baratheon, Lannister, and Stark. Beside Jon, Ned stiffened. Robert's brows climbed. "And my queen?" Robert asked. Marbrand swallowed. "Cersei would remain with her children as guardian until the marriage is consummated when Princess Myrcella attains her majority." "Cunning." Robert laughed bleakly. "You wed my heir to a child. Keep the lioness near the cubs, and hold hostages in all but name." "Hostages is an ugly word, Your Grace." Robert took a step, hammer tilting. "An ugly world we live in." Jon's gout tightened. The notion of marriage to Myrcella felt absurd. She was a sweet girl, perhaps 12, and he no more than a stranger wearing a borrowed title. Yet politics seldom concerned itself with sentiment. His eyes flicked to Ned. The Lord's face was stone. Robert asked, "If I refuse?" Marbrand's voice remained level. "Lord Tywin will make camp outside the city and open lines of trade north and south. If the crown attempts to move Queen Cersei without consent, he will regard it as act of war." Robert grunted. "Tell the lion we need no permission. The queen departs tomorrow." Marbrand bowed. No smile, no protest. He replaced the scroll in its tube, remounted, and withdrew beyond arrow range. The portcullis groaned shut. Back inside, Robert paced along the rampart. The man offers barter, as expected. Renly, who had come down to join them, said, "He must believe rumor of discontent in the city. If he camps outside, the small folk might flock to him." Ned said, "Or he waits until night, slips gold to a captain, and opens a gate." Robert pounded a fist on Crenell. "Then we keep watch." He turned to Jon. "Marriages aside, you will not wed this fortnight. Focus on tomorrow, your presentation before the Sept, swearing to gods old and new." He eyed Ned. "And you? I need garrisons loyal beyond coin." "I have men from Winterfell and the Vale," Ned said. "But not enough." "We'll have more," Robert growled. "If Tywin forces our hand, the Iron Throne will crush his banners again." Jon met Renly's gaze. The younger Baratheon's eyes gleamed with calculation, doubt, perhaps ambition. It troubled Jon how quickly each conversation turned to swords. And no. That evening, Jon sought quiet in the Red Keep's ancient library. Dusty scroll racks, vaulting arches, a sanctum unmarred by shouts. He traced titles in High Valyrian, Old Kiskari. He found a tome chronicling heraldic origins and opened on a mahogany table. Candlelight wavered while he leafed through pages of painted beasts and sigils. The crowned stag, the direwolf rampant, the dragon three-headed, his blood tangled. Footsteps disturbed the hush. He looked up to see Samwell Tarly, cheeks reddened from exercise, tunic too fine for a steward. Sam had ridden south that very morning, bearing dispatches from Lord Commander Mormont Dada. He waved shyly. "Sam," Jon greeted, surprised delight raising his voice. Sam bent under a stack of smaller scrolls. Maester Aemon sent letters for Pycelle. He set them down gingerly. "I heard. Well, everyone's heard. You're prince now." The phrase jolted Jon every time. "So they say." Sam studied him with anxious sympathy. "How are you?" Jon closed the book. "Overwhelmed." Sam nodded, pushing spectacles up his nose. "You know the wall will miss you." "I miss it already." Jon frowned. "Did the Lord Commander truly send you just for letters?" "Letters and ravens," Sam said, gaze flicking about. "And a question." He took a breath. "Some nights in the rookery the ravens speak strange words. Name you, not Snow, but King. Aemon wonders if prophecy is at play." Jon's stomach dipped. "Prophecy belongs to maesters and dreamers." "Perhaps," Sam murmured, "but Aemon believes each man writes his own prophecy. By choices." He lifted one of the scrolls. "This is for you." Jon accepted. Wax stamped with the black crow of the Night's Watch. He broke it. "Jon, walls remember. Promises bind. If you cannot fly back north, send wings. Winter marches faster than you Southron kings. Stay true. Jor Mormont." The simple strokes carried the smell of pine resin, the bite of frozen dawn. Jon folded it carefully. "Tell him I served the realm as best I can." Sam smiled. "He knows." Jon reached across, clasped Sam's arm. "Stay safe in this nest of vipers." Sam managed a nervous laugh. "I'll keep to scrolls. And then a while." Joe. Meanwhile, in the Queen's Tower, Cersei prepared for supper, yet ate nothing. She donned a gown of severe black velvet, lion-headed clasp at her throat. Across the room, Jaime paced, gold hand laced behind his back. An entire day of confinement frayed even his easy grace. "You cannot stay," he said. "The king means to remove you by force. Let him pry me from stone," Cersei said mirthlessly. "Myrcella once survived travel without her mother's hand. Tommen will survive worse," Jaime said. "But Joffrey must be king." Jaime paused. "Our father's camp sits outside the walls by now. When he moves, blood flows. I'd rather we decide how much." Cersei's gaze hardened. "Then, open a gate tonight." Yes, word in one hand, key in the other. Jaime dipped his head. "Even I cannot cut through such numbers." She paced toward the shuttered window, flung it open. Rats squeaked, dislodged from the sill. Night breeze carried distant campfires, faint horns. "Father will test the walls, not storm them. Fear will feed on itself. We must feed it whispers of plague within, of starving children, of Baratheon and Stark at odds. Let rumor rot Robert's alliances." Jaime touched his sword pommel. "Rumor doesn't kill archers. It kills trust." Her smile was a blade's edge. "And trust failing, gates open." He saw then the fire in her eyes, equal parts desperation and ruthlessness. "Very well." He turned to leave. "But remember, sister, sometimes gates open both ways." Now, beyond the Blackwater, Tywin studied the outline of King's Landing against starlight. A mass of canvas tents formed his encampment. Orderly avenues, braziers burning. He'd placed his pavilion on a gentle rise, affording view of walls and the flicker of torchlight along battlements. Behind him, bronze-armored guards stood silent. Kevan entered, carrying ledger and mug of wine. "Our envoys return, brother. They report Robert refuses the betrothal." Tywin's expression never flickered. "Ace expected." Kevan raised his brows. "And expected also that he send the queen away." Tywin closed gauntleted fingers around the chess piece on his travel board, a lion carved of jade. "He will find that difficult." He moved the lion 2 squares closer to the marble stag. "But we need not breach walls." Supplies run lean. The city cannot endure long siege. Meanwhile, I have dispatches from Lord Mathis Rowan and Lord Leighton Hightower. He slid parchments across. Kevan scanned quickly. Rowan hedges. Hightower offers neutrality. Not the alliance we need. Not yet. Tywin repositioned another piece. "Send word to Tarly. Remind him the Reach's harvest rots if war blocks the Roserad. Offer favorable levies on grain shipments once we hold the capital." Kevan hesitated. "You mean to take the city? When opportunity opens?" "Siga will soften them. Gold will finish." He tapped the stag. "Robert thinks with heart, not mind. The bastard heir, no insult intended, is his heart. We target the mind. Ned Stark." Tywin looked northward, though stone and canvas blocked any view. "A man's honor can bend if his children lie beneath swords. If Stark fractures, Robert falls. Then we dictate succession." Kevan swallowed. "And Jon Snow? Either a hostage or a martyr. The realm forgets martyrs faster than kings." He set the jade lion precisely, as if already triumphant. Now." Inside the Red Keep that night, Jon practiced with Sir Barristan in the training yard lit by torches. Barristan wore mail so old it gleamed like pewter. Jon sweated in boiled leather. They circled, longswords clanging lightly. Barristan pressed him with a steady rain of cuts, testing, measuring. Jon parried. Footwork borrowed from the wall. From Master-at-Arms Thorne, from Sirio's phantom guidance. Each clash convinced him how much he still lacked. At last Baratheon stepped back. Saluted. "Well struck, your highness." Jon sucked air, lowering his blade. "You held back." "I tested," the old knight corrected. "Skill grows with pressure, not overwhelming force." He unlaced a gauntlet. "You favor the left slip when pressed. Against a quicker foe it's wise. Against a brute it invites a shield punch. Mind your spacing." "Then chow." Jon nodded. "Thank you, sir." Barristan regarded him, lines deep at the corners of keen blue eyes. "Knighthood has less to do with steel than honor. I've watched kings forget that. Daunt." He sheathed sword. "When coronation comes, when banners fly, remember every small oath given, every small man behind it. Break too many small oaths, and the great ones shatter." Jon absorbed the words, throat tight. "I will try, Sir Barristan." "Trying is doing, Prince." He smiled faintly, then strode off. Jon cooled blade on the stone rim of a fountain. Ghost lapped water. In uneven torchlight his reflection wavered. A face both familiar and alien. He lifted the Valyrian dagger Ned had gifted, studied its dark ripples. Dead roses still lay in his chamber. Their scent trailed him like memory. A distant horn drifted over the walls. Tywin's camp, shifting watch. Jon sheathed the dagger and looked to the sky. Clouds obscured stars. Somewhere, winter sharpened its claws. And so, north of the neck, in Winterfell's Godswood, Bran Stark crouched at the foot of the heart tree. Summer breezes rustled crimson leaves, but Bran's breath fogged, as though midwinter had stolen upon him. In his dream he saw swirling snow, dead men marching, and a wall cracked like brittle glass. Yet tonight, a new image intruded. Jon crowned in a hall of swords, and behind him, a shadowed figure with antlers branching into flame. Bran woke gasping among moss roots. Hodor dozed nearby, head resting on log. Bran shuddered, pulling Wolfskin tight. He whispered to the tree, "Protect him," though he scarcely knew whether he spoke to gods or ghosts. The rustling leaves sounded almost like a reply. One word, perhaps, soon. And then, at Castle Black, Jorah Mormont read Joan's Raven aloud to the assembled officers. He finished, then looked up. Firelight carving hollows in his lined cheeks. "Snow chooses duty to realm," he said quietly. "The wall will salute him when next he walks its length." Sarah Leeser sneered. "If next he bothers." A burst of mutters. Mormont silenced them with a raised hand. "Pray the boy's duty does not cost the watch more dearly than absence. Word from Eastwatch says ghosts stir along the Skirling Pass. And Craster claims dead giants move beneath northern ice. Winter comes. Crowns melt. We stand or we fall alike. Now." The Black Brothers fell into hush as wind rattled shutters. Beyond the great wall of ice, the dark stretched deeper than any palace hall. Indifferent to thrones. And well. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen rode through warm morning light, flanked by loyal Dothraki and stray exiles attracted to her swelling legend. She turned over Robert's news yet again. "Jon Snow, blood of Lyanna and Rhaegar," proclaimed Heir. What did it mean for her unborn child? For any claim she herself might wield? Jorah rode close. "A rival Targaryen across the water changes nothing," he said. "You remain the blood of the dragon." "He is blood too," she replied. "Perhaps we are two candles destined to burn, or to join flame." "Candles burn each other," Jorah warned. She touched her belly. "Or they burn brighter together. I will send a raven when we reach Qarth. If Jon Snow seeks peace, we will see. War enough stalks the world without us spilling more of our own." And her horse tossed its mane. Behind them, a swirl of dust marked thousands on the move. The world felt as if it had begun to tilt, sliding all peoples toward a converging storm. And see. In King's Landing, night deepened. Jon finally returned to chambers near the Tower of the Hand. Passing guards nodded. Servants slipped into alcoves. He entered, bolting the door. Candles burned low, casting soft glow over the small writing desk, the vase of preserved roses, the circlet. He removed doublet, water-splashed face at basin, then sat at desk and unfurled parchment. Ned had left a note while Jon trained. "We ride at dawn to inspect the Rosa Road's supply train. I will return by evening. Guard the king. Guard yourself." N. Jon folded it, feeling loneliness creep between ribs. He trimmed quill, dipped ink, and began a letter to Sam, news compressed into careful lines. When done, he sealed with blank wax, for he had no sigil yet. He moved to bed but paused at window. Across the courtyard, torches flared near the Queen's tower. Silhouettes of guards shifted. He thought of Cersei, of Myrcella, Tommen, even Joffrey. Their world overturned as violently as his. Was it justice to pry children from mother for crimes of birth? Justice seldom walked hand in hand with mercy. Sudden barking shattered reflection. Ghost bristled, gazing at door. Jon snatched Longclaw. A knock. Rapid. Soft. He opened a crack. Arya. Eyes wide. "Jon." She whispered. "Sansa's gone." His chest seized. "Gone? Where?" "I don't know. I woke and her bed was empty." A guard outside said a maid saw her led toward the Queen's tower. Jon's pulse hammered. "Stay with guards. I'll find her." "Bye." Arya opened her mouth to protest. He steered her toward the hall, motioned 2 Stark men-at-arms to keep her. Then he sprinted, Ghost bounding ahead. Corridors blurred. He crossed the upper courtyard, boots splashing through puddles of an afternoon shower. At the Queen's tower, a dozen gold cloaks milled restlessly. He approached, blade drawn. "Prince," their captain said, startled. "Orders. Where is Lady Sansa?" "Last we saw, inside. By order of the Queen." "Open." The man hesitated, glancing toward torch-lit windows above. Jon leaned, voice icy. "The king's authority outranks the Queen's." Ghost bared teeth. The captain swallowed and signaled. 2 guards swung the oak door. Jon entered a wide foyer rich with Myrish carpets. Sconce flames quivered. He ascended a narrow stair, senses tracking each murmur. At second floor, he caught distant sobbing. Ghost sniffed, then darted. Jon followed into a sitting room lined with mirrors. Candlelight flickered off glass surfaces, multiplying the scene. Sansa seated at vanity, hair undone, cheeks wet. Beside her stood Ser Meryn Trant, sword unsheathed. At the room's far end, Cersei lounged on chaise, gown like darkest silk, goblet of wine swirling in her hand. She looked up, a smile curving. "Prince Jon." She purred. "Come rescue the maiden, have you?" Jon raised Longclaw, voice calm. "Release her." Meryn shifted stance. Cersei sipped. "A misunderstanding. I invited the young lady for stitching advice." "I am told." Sansa hiccuped softly. She said Joffrey wanted to see me at midnight. Then this night. Cersei's look stilled her tongue. Jon kept blade high. "You would threaten a girl now?" "Threaten?" Cersei rose, the wine swirling like blood. "I would secure what remains of my children's legacy. Ending her would draw your heart to pain. Perhaps sway your dear uncle to call blades home." Her smile thinned. "Pain remains the language kings heed." Jon stepped forward. "Let her leave. Whatever you want, speak to me." Cersei considered. "A single corridor separates my quarters from open air. One push." She gestured to balcony behind her. "And descent follows. Convenient accident, perhaps." Jon's knuckles whitened. "Do not." "Then, trade." Cersei's eyes glittered. "You will swear before court to restore Joffrey to succession after Robert's death." In exchange, I release your Stark sister and sail west without protest. Impossible. Swearing thus would unravel everything Robert had risked. Jon's mind raced. Footsteps sounded behind. Ned burst in, armor still dusty from road. "Cersei," he said, breath sharp. "You overplay." She laughed. "I barely began." Ned drew sword. Meryn interposed shield. Jon shifted to guard Sansa, who clung to his sleeve. "No blood," Ned ordered. "Stand down, Trant." Meryn glanced at Cersei. She tilted her head. The knight hesitated, then lowered steel. Ned sheathed half an inch. "Wise choice," Ned said to Cersei. "You know the king's edict. You step beyond lines, you join your father outside the gates." Her eyes narrowed. "Lines shift, Lord Stark." She turned to Sansa. "Run along, little dove." Sansa scurried to Jon. He guided her toward door. Ghost followed. Ned lingered, eyes locked with the queen. Outside, Jon gave Sansa to Arya, who had slipped past guards to wait. The sisters embraced amid tears and trembling relief. Jon exhaled, only now sensing severity of his heartbeat. Moments later, Ned joined them, jaw clenched. "Go," he told daughters. "You too, Jon. I will speak with Robert and decide when." Dawn? Midnight Court convened. The king furious, Cersei defiant. Council hushed. Jon stood to one side, flanked by Baratheon and Renly. Robert demanded explanation. Ned supplied. The queen refused to concede wrongdoing, calling the event misinterpreted courtesy. Robert's viands bulged purple. "Courtesy ends when swords unsheathe, woman." Cersei sipped wine. "Your city is powder. Strip me of title and spark flies." "Thou." Robert advanced a step. "You leave at dawn. Joffrey may stay or follow. Tommen and Myrcella are innocent. They sail to Casterly with or without you." She bowed, mock sweet. "As you command, your grace." Then she turned, hips swaying, vanished into night. The hall emptied slowly. Robert slumped on throne steps, head in hands. Ned knelt beside. "I grow tired, Stark," the king murmured. Ned answered, voice low. "Victory never spares goodwill. Yet dawn persists." Jon listened. He felt older, as though each hour layered a year upon him. He saw Ghost. The direwolf lay near the doors, eyes fixed on darkness. Jon knelt, stroking fur. "We will see this through," he whispered. Ghost's tail flicked. From distant courtyard came faint rumble. Siega drums from Tuin's camp, sounding slow, methodical. Outside walls, fires glowed like a necklace of smoldering gems encircling the city. War coiled, ready to strike. Jon rose and stepped toward the throne where Robert's silhouette slouched. In his heart, ice and fire collided, forging something new. Part promise, part peril. He breathed once, steady, and took another step, until wood echoed beneath his boots and the Iron Throne loomed behind him like a crown of shadows, waiting for the morning sun. Okay. The night wore on until the fires beyond the wall seemed to melt into the paling stars, and still Jon found no rest. Torchlight spilled through slitted shutters, painting bars across the bedchamber floor like the lattice of an unseen cage. Every hour, a watchman's horn sounded from the ramparts, its mournful note rising to a tense crescendo, then fading as though carried off by crows. He lay in half-sleep, boots still on, tunic damp from the earlier confrontation. Ghost kept vigil at the door, hackles intermittently rippling as if the wolf sensed tempests, brewing where men could hear only silence. When the first gray hint of dawn touched the city's jagged roofline, a rap sounded. 3 brisk knocks. Jon rose, wrestling past fatigue, and unlatched the door to find Sir Barristan and Selmy, flanked by a single torchbearer. "The king summons the prince to the Sept of Baelor," the old knight said. "Best arm yourself. Ceremonial plate will suffice." Jon ran a hand through his hair. "Why the Septet at this hour?" "Sanctuary for vows, your highness. And perhaps a measure of theater." So it began. Jon nodded and dressed swiftly. Maids armed with polished steel cuirass, black leather doublet subtly trimmed with direwolf sigils Ned's tailors had prepared overnight, and a deep indigo cloak clasped by a plain silver stag. He declined to circlet, weight enough pressed upon his brow without it. When he emerged, Barristan led him through lantern-lit galleries where dust motes whirled in the torchbearers' wake like idle spirits. They descended the long stair and crossed the outer yard. The chill held a promise of real autumn at last. Atop every tower, red and gold banners fluttered opposite black and silver. Baratheon and the yet unnamed sigil of Jon's own future household. No sign of Lannister crimson stained the keep. Robert had ordered those standards struck at moonrise following the Queen's defiance. That single act lent the dawn a raw, uncertain beauty. Like a battlefield before the charge. Outside the Iron Gate, a mounted escort waited. 4 Kingsguard, 8 Winterfell spears, and a dozen goldcloaks, whose fidelity Barristan had vetted personally. Once Jon was saddled, the column moved out. The city still slept in patchy spurts. Hawkers arranging stalls, septa passing with prayer books, whores returning home on bare feet, slick with evening's dew. Most small folk only stared at the prince's passing. It was too early for cheers, too late for the safety of indifference. As they cantered along Visenya's hill, Jon glimpsed Tywin's siege camp across the river. Fires dotted the plain in orderly rings. Banners with the golden lion stirred in a lazy, confident wind. He felt the old ache of apprehension but forced himself to watch, to memorize. Fear, he'd learned, dimmed under scrutiny. At the foot of the great seep-tee, the escort dismounted. Marble steps shone dull and damp. Sir Barristan guided Jon up the broad ascent, old joints creaking though his posture never wavered. 2 sparrows knelt by the portal, sweeping rainwater away. They bowed low, but dared not lift their eyes. Inside, vaulted ceilings soared into echoing gloom, broken only by candles beneath the 7 towering statues. The air smelled of myrrh and melted wax, tinged with underlying mildew. King's Landing scent even holiness could not wholly mask. Robert waited near the mother's feet, clad in embroidered doublet that strained over his bandaged side. Beside him stood Ned Stark, clean-shaven, gray eyes shining with something between pride and sorrow. Grand Maester Pycelle leaned on his staff, while Varys fluttered in dove-gray robes at a respectful remove. Renly and Sir Barristan's fellows formed a semicircle behind. Jon knelt before the altar out of instinct as much as reverence. Robert's voice filled the chamber, sonorous despite exhaustion. "Jon Snow," he said, "whom I name Jon of houses Baratheon and Stark, stand and hear the charge I lay upon you." Jon rose. Candlelight drew bronze hues across Robert's face, accentuating the infinite fatigue carving lines at the corners of his mouth. Yet his eyes burned fiercely. "I am king by conquest and by acclaim," Robert intoned. "I hold these lands not as a tyrant, but as a steward for my heirs, and for all those who call these kingdoms home. Treachery has infected my house, lies gnaw at the root of every ancient tree. Therefore I bring the truth into the light of the gods. Kneel and swear, that you may inherit both burden and blessing." Jon felt the weight of stillness behind him. No shifting armor, no cough from the gallery benches. Even the disciples lower in the nave sensed the moment's gravity and fell silent. He kneeled once more upon the marble dais. "Do you, Jon, swear by earth and water, by bronze and iron, by ice and fire, to defend the realm, to uphold its people's welfare, to keep just faith with both old gods and new, and to rule not as tyrant but as guardian?" The words rolled through him like a sudden storm tide. He thought of Lord Commander Mormont's letter, of the wall's austere vows. Duty had followed him south in different raiment, but with the same stern visage. He answered, without falter, "I swear by earth and water, by bronze and iron, by ice and fire." Robert's thick fingers closed around Jon's shoulders. "Rise, Prince of Dragonstone." Then, in a softer murmur, only Jon and Ned could catch, "May the gods shield you better than they shielded me." The formalities concluded in a hush, disturbed only by Varys' polite clap, quickly joined by Renly's more spirited applause. Ned embraced Jon briefly, whispering, "Well spoken." Pycelle pronounced blessings in the quavering drone of Septon liturgy. A cluster of small folk who had drifted into the sept, drawn by rumor, pressed forward to glimpse their new prince. Jon found their faces strange with reverence, an emotion he did not feel directed toward himself. When all ritual duties were met, Robert motioned Baratheon and Ned aside. On the steps behind the statue of the father, he laid out the day's grim agenda in blunt strokes. "Tywin seeks to strangle us," Robert grumbled. "He will not muster Zeeg ladders yet, nor catapults. First, he will starve. Second, he will sow riot. So we must feed the people, keep markets open, slit any throat whispering fear for coin." "Bane?" "Syrian Tarly's grain barges from Maidenpool still unload by the hour," Renly reported. "But rumors claim half will go to Tywin once harbor fires start." Robert grunted. "Then postguards on every granary. Double weights at gates, no smuggling corn neither." Ned, voice grim, added, "Your Grace, rationing will buy weeks, not months. The Roserwad cannot stay clear if the Reach commits to Tywin." "We'll bargain with the Reach," Robert decided. "And if bargain fails, we'll remind them what Summerfield looks like after wildfire." Jon listened, half-dazed. The cruelty of siege, weaponizing bread, turning hunger into blades, chafed against everything he had learned at Winterfell. Yet he heard the undercurrent of desperation in each man's counsel. Tywin's army outnumbered the city garrison thrice over. Only the walls and a few thousand loyalists inside kept Robert's crown intact. The council dispersed by mid-morning, each man rushing to his appointed tasks. Jon lingered at the steps. A lane of newcomers waited for turns before the mother. Wives, farmers, a father bearing a fevered child. How fragile their worlds seemed, balanced upon decisions forged in high councils like distant thunder, beyond their ken. He made a silent vow that they would not be forgotten in the tide of iron and gold soon to crash against these walls. Outside, Ned fell into step beside him. "Stannis has answered," he said, producing a sealed raven scroll. "Arrives within the week. No word of allegiance, but he marches with 5,000 men." Jon exhaled. "An ally." "A brother," Ned cautioned, "but not always a friend. We must greet him on the river before Tywin intercepts." "I'll ride with you," Jon offered. Ned eyed him. "And leave Robert flanked by spiders and smiling foxes. Better you stay. The king leans on you. It steadies him." Jon accepted without protest, but felt uneasy. Like a sword kept sheathed, while war brewed. As they parted, a stable boy hurried over with a small folded parchment, addressed only with a single drawn lion paw print. Jon slipped it into his cloak until he reached a shadowed arcade. There, he opened it to find elegant, looping script. "Prince Jon, we shared little conversation behind the court's bustle, yet I saw kindness in you. I'd go with my mother for exile's sake. Remember a friend beyond the walls. Myrcella of House Lannister. Nothing more. No threat, no scheme. A child's uncertain farewell." He folded the note, heart twisting. For an instant, the swirl of banners and blood seemed a grotesque tapestry, obscuring simple humanity. Midday heat thickened, dusty breezes funneled through alleys, carrying rumors like sparks. In Flea Bottom, butchers spoke of Tywin's gold. In Cobbler's Square, a hedge knight boasted that a red comet had been seen over the Trident, augury that a lion would devour a stag. Jon ordered patrols doubled near the Dragon Gate, where word of the Queen's departure bred tension like open sores. He personally rode the perimeter once, Ghost trotting alongside. Commoners bowed or stared. Children pointed at the White Wolf with awe. Jon forced himself to meet each gaze, not with regal hauteur, but with the frankness of a lad who knew cow manure and frozen latrines. That afternoon word arrived that Cersei's procession had exited the Lion Gate under heavy guard. Bound west. Robert refused to watch. Jon did. From atop the Barbican he saw a sleek column of wagons escorted by Lannister men-at-arms, wearing house colors, turned inside out so as not to tempt arrows. Joffrey rode at the head on a black courser, chin lifted, mouth fixed in sullen sneer. Myrcella turned once, scanning the walls. Jon lifted an arm. She seemed to see, offering a hesitant flutter of gloved fingers. before the train disappeared into the rising dust. Across the river Lannister horns brayed, long low notes like lions grieving. A clever show of solidarity, or perhaps a signal. The city watch stiffened on parapets. Jon felt the sudden hush, a thread drawn taut across two armies, ready to snap. Evening found him again in the Tower of the Hand. Ned had left an hour earlier to collect his escort for the Roserad ride. Robert had retired to the Solar with wine and a healer. Jon stood alone, studying maps, roads traced like veins across the heart of the realm. South, Dragonstone Islands. North, the wall like a spine of ice. Tiny game pieces represented hosts on the move. Tywin's lions, Stannis' fiery heart banners, the absent Kraken of the Iron Islands, whose silence itself felt ominous. A soft rap on the doorframe disturbed his thoughts. Varys glided in, fingertips touching. "Your Highness, might I lend small counsel?" Jon inclined his head. "Speak." A rider slipped past our eastern watch this dusk. A faceless courier carrying sealed letters from Tywin's camp to the Septons of Lannisport, and to certain officers within our city watch. The eunuch spread his hands. "Nothing provable, but I mistrust secret ink when openly offered parchment lies at hand." Jon's jaw clenched. "You suspect bribery?" "I suspect many things, my prince, and trust only what history teaches. Lannisters bribe as clouds promise rain." Varys' eyes glittered. "May I advise a quiet purge of the watch's upper ranks? Replace with men whose pockets I shall find too threadbare for gold." Jon weighed. Ned had warned him. Varys trafficked in half-truths, yet his intelligence rarely erred. "I will speak to the king," Jon said. "But no faces disappear without evidence. Fear alone seeds rebellion." Varys bowed slightly, a sigh married to amusement. "Mercy commendable, yet mercy ill-timed may bleed a kingdom. Still, I obey. Before dawn I shall produce a list of names with proofs more tangible than rumor. Judge then." He turned to leave, then paused. "You knew Queen Cersei would attempt a gambit with Sansa Stark. Did you foresee the exact ploy?" "I trusted her desperation," Jon said. "Not my foresight. Desperate foes may soon include friends." Varys murmured. "Renly smiles but collects banners. Stannis glares but offers swords. You stand at a crossroads where every direction is wound about with blades." His gaze flicked to the map. "Oh, spare a thought for roads beyond the Seven Kingdoms. Across the sea other dragons stir." Before Jon could reply, the eunuch melted into dim corridor. A cold shiver chased after. Ghost padded in, ears pricked, and set his jaws on the corner of a wooden lion token left by Jon's elbow, then dropped it at Jon's feet. Interpreting omens in a wolf's play seemed folly, yet Jon could not shake the symbolism. The following dawn delivered Ned Stark's departure. Jon accompanied him to the Gate of the Gods, where 40 riders prepared to escort supply wagons along the Roserad and meet Stannis' host. The moment hung heavy. Father and son, uncle and nephew, had not parted since Winterfell. Ned clasped Jon's forearm. "Rule with patience. Remember, each man's fear is his own cage." Jon stared into the gray eyes that had anchored his childhood. "Return swiftly, father." A rare smile touched Ned's mouth. "I've more stories to teach you." Then he mounted, signaled, and the column rattled off, steel glinting among russet roofs. As hooves faded, dust swirled into a pale halo round Jon and the gate guards. He longed to ride after them, to taste open road, forest scent, yet duty pinned him to stone. He turned back into the city, and with each step, the weight of crownless authority settled heavier. That evening, Robert summoned him privately. The king looked older than the sunrise ceremony. Eyes rimmed red, bandaged side seeping afresh through linen. A pitcher of wine stood nearly drained. "Lost another sparring bout with your wound?" Jon asked gently. Robert chuckled, coughing. "Dan Boar scored deeper than any sword. Poppy dulls, but dullness breeds sloth. I hate sloth." He gestured to a high-backed chair. "Sit. I'll not mince. The realm's future may hang on a letter." Jon settled. Robert produced parchment bearing the hand of Lord Jon Arryn, long since passed. Found in Pycelle's archives. Jon Arryn was digging into bastardy, you recall. This letter names not only the Lannister treachery but others, plots swirling around my reign from the hour I marched into the city. I wish you to read it, then decide should we reveal at Dawn Council, or hide until our backs are sure. Dandaru. Jon took the letter, heart pounding. He scanned paragraphs describing pacts between Tyrell Goldcloaks, whispers of Martell vengeance, even suggestion of clandestine Baratheon descent. Men eager to replace a drunkard king with a younger stag. The final lines urged swift legitimization of the boy in the north, though Arryn did not know the full truth. Prophetic words from a grave. Jon folded it. Truth exposed may break alliances further, or weld rightful steel, Robert countered. But I trust your judgment. You trust a boy reluctant to wear your circlet. Robert's shoulders slumped. Better reluctant prince than eager traitor. Jon stood, gripped the king's forearm. Sleep. At sunrise we'll weigh the risk. When he left the solar, torchlight flickered imperceptibly. He sensed a presence and drew Longclaw, but only shadows filled the corridor. Still, Ghost snarled at darkness, until servants nearby muttered prayers. 3 hours before dawn, Jon sat reading Arryn's letter again when a boom shook the keep. Distant, hollow, followed by cries. He leapt to the window. Orange glow climbed the night sky toward the northern inner wall. Another explosion roared. Wildfire. Jon dashed into hall, Ghost bounding. Already bells clanged and footsteps thundered. Ser Boros Blount appeared, face pallid. Warehouse near the Dragon Gate, he gasped. Wildfire caches, set ablaze. Fire leaping roof to roof. Jon's stomach clenched. Sabotage. We cannot douse wildfire, Blount said. We must contain. Jon raced downstairs, grabbing every guard he met. Orders flew from his lips, sharp as arrowheads. Lines of buckets from wells for outer flames. Archers on rooftops to shoot fleeing saboteurs. Hostlers to drag horses from stables at risk. Panic already spread. He heard screams of women, crash of collapsing timber. Street by street, he directed containment. Smoke rolled thick, tasting of copper and nightmare. Sparks spiraled skyward like mad fireflies. Twice, fireballs whooshed as sealed clay pots erupted, green inferno devouring wood and flesh alike. Jon's cloak singed, ash crusted his lashes. Still he pressed on, Ghost ever at his heels hauling charred debris with jaws. On a narrow lane, he found children trapped behind a flaming cart. He dragged the cart aside, wood blistering his palms through gloves, and ushered them into open square. A mother sobbed thanks. He signaled her toward the Red Keep's gate. Refugees already streamed there under guard. By dawn, the worst was contained, though smoldering black skeletons of warehouses smudged the skyline. 30 dwellings lost, 20 dead, more wounded. But the Dragon Gate remained intact. Jon zagged against a cistern wall. Sweat and soot mingling down his neck. A maester offered salve. He waved him off. Ser Barristan arrived, lines of fatigue carved deeper than fire scars. Spies caught 2 arsonists. Unknown crests on leather. Pockets full of lion coin. Jon closed his eyes. Tywin denies involvement, of course. The king will want counsel swiftly. Jon straightened, muscles protesting, and strode back toward the keep. Exhaustion dogged each step, but fury burned hotter than fatigue. Tywin had not yet raised siege towers. He sent fire ahead instead, a test of will and of panic among small folk. Jon felt the tremor along the city's spine. Fear that could tip into riot if stoked again. At the council chamber, smoke still clung to his hair. Soot stained Robert's red beard as well. The king had come down to the front lines with a warhammer despite healers' pleas. Robert slammed the weapon on the table. A lion's welcome gift, he growled. So be it. Renly paced, green cloak swirling. We quell rumors, distribute bread free on morrow. Show the people the crown holds, not Tywin. Menman. Pycelle coughed plumes of dust. But stores. Bread now, Robert barked. Fear later. Jon placed Aaron's letter before them. And truth later still. We cannot expose more secrets while fires burn. Robert's gaze locked with his. Then you decide when. Battlement horns interrupted. Long note descending. Sir Baratheon bowed his head. Parley as requested at the river gate. All eyes turned to Jon. He wiped grime from cheek. I will go. With a single banner of truce. Robert frowned. You risk capture. They think me boy enough to sway or kill. Let them think. Jon's tone surprised even him. Steel-laced. Perhaps we parley. Perhaps we measure our enemy's face before winter swallows us all. 5 minutes later, Jon rode through postern and down to the riverbank. One white flag accompanied him, borne by a stark bannerman. Opposite, on a slim galley anchored mid-current, stood Tyrion Lannister, dressed not in armor but modest brown, a single guard behind. The dwarf raised a hand. Peace, your highness. I bring words, not fire. Jon halted short hoof at the water's edge. Whose words? My father's. And mine. Tyrion's expression flickered with curiosity, perhaps grudging admiration. You saved children and city tonight. Clever. My father believes clever men can end wars before they begin. Jon bit back retort. Wildfire killed innocents. If that is his first offer. That was not his offer. Tyrion cut in surprisingly hard. We keep our wildfire locked tight. Someone else opened Kingsguard caches, not ours. Jon remembered Varys' whisper of bribes within the watch. His jaw set. Then who? Tyrion's brows popped. Your queen in exile, perhaps. Or zealots within. King's Landing breeds nations of rats, prince. My father sees burning city as poor prize. He'd rather claim it whole. Them. Ensam. Elwyn? Words cheapened beside green fire. The dwarf bowed his head. Indeed. Still, father proposes ceasefire. Withdraw your garrison from the northern bank. Allow his smiths to bridge supply lines. In return, he halts further action, feeds city 200 wains grain weekly, and recognizes your succession once Robert passes. A bridge into our flank, Jon said. He would feed us and shackle us. Better chained lion than rabid dog, Tyrion shrugged. And his chain is gold, not iron. Jon recalled Aaron's letter, Tyrell unrest, Ned's absence. An impossible equation. Tyrion waited, then sighed. Refuse, and war resumes at sunset. He will not grant second counsel. Jon's knuckles whitened on reins. I will have answer by high sun. The dwarf smiled, eyes sharp. A reasonable prince. I'll attend your raven. He bowed, gestured to oarsmen, and shoved off. On the ride back, Jon's mind churned. Horse hooves splashed muddy shallows. Smoke still hovered over charred quarter. Ghost of devastation yet living. Ceasefire might spare lives, but cost sovereignty, empower Tywin. Leave, Robert humiliated. War risked roaring inferno across the realm but preserved honor. Which vow outweighed which? Crossing the postern, he found Varys waiting. I heard, the eunuch murmured. My birds wondered if the dwarf might attempt candor. Jon dismounted. You suspect Cersei ordered the fire? Or perhaps child Joffrey? Flames thrill boys. Varys shook shaven head. We shall learn. Jon strode to the tower. Dawn-painted clouds bruised purple. The world's fresh wound. He ascended Robert's stair 2 at a time. In the solar he laid out Tywin's proposal. Robert listened, stone-faced, then flung his goblet, so wine-splattered arras of a hunted stag. Feed us? Chain us? Never. The king's voice shook with fury. I'll starve on honor before feasting on treachery. Jon met his gaze. Yet if the walls fall, innocents burn either way. We must weigh pride against bones. Robert's hand clutched his ribs. Pain etched his expression but did not soften his tone. You give counsel like a maester, but realms forged on caution crumble. Battle is risk. I choose risk. Then, Selmy spoke quietly from the hearth. Your Grace, the city stands only if the people stand with it. Yesterday they cheered your heir. Today they mourn burned homes. Tomorrow we fling Tywin's head over the battlements, Robert roared. Jon straightened. Then we require allies. Stannis, yes. But Storm's End host alone insufficient. We must win Renly or the Reach. Renly wants crown. Robert spat. Hell hedge until wind shifts. Then we become the wind, Jon answered. A silence beat between them. Then Robert's shoulders eased. You've steel after all, boy. He drew breath. Let's send ravens. Promise the Reach safe grain trade. Lift certain tariffs. Renly loves pageantry. Give him a hero's parade. And you, write Tywin refusal but cloak it in courtesy. The lion loves velvet wrappers on steel. I'll draft it once, Jon said. He paused. And the letter of Jon Arryn? Robert stared toward window. We keep it sheathed until Stannis arrives. If we wield too soon, we swing alone. Jon left, feeling as though invisible chains tightened around every decision. Outside, the city's clamor resumed. Vendors hawking burnt salvage at discount. Masons hauling stone to patch smoldering walls. Septons chanting blessings for charred corpses lined on the Street of Sisters. He breathed acrid air and began dictating letters. One to Tywin, courteous and unyielding. One to Mace Tyrell, gilded with overtures of trade. One to Renly, painting him champion of concord if he rode at brother's side. One to Stannis, urging haste and unity. Hours passed. When parchments sealed, he climbed to battlements for a moment's calm. The sun cleared smoky haze, lighting the Blackwater to molten gold. Lannister camp still thrummed, but Jon perceived a subtle shift. A new ridge of earthworks near the riverbank, siege towers half assembled. Ghost padded to the Merlon, muzzle lifted. Jon followed the wolf's gaze to a rising shadow on Far Hill. The flutter of a banner dark as dried blood, a red flaky heart erupting in golden flame. Stannis had arrived earlier than expected. Hope stirred. With Stannis' disciplined men inside walls, Tywin might balk. Yet Stannis' stern principles could clash with Robert's mercurial rule. And worse, Stannis might question Jon's legitimacy based on faith rather than law. The Red Heart's flames seemed to dance like a riddle. Trumpets echoed from the city's north gate. Jon descended rapidly, intercepting the advance party. 300 knights dressed in ink-black plate. The fiery heart sigil emblazoned over mailed chests, accompanied by Priestess Melisandre astride midnight mare. Stannis himself led, jaw clenched as though chewing iron. Jon greeted him before the gatehouse. Lord Stannis, welcome. King's Landing stands honored. Gandro. Stannis dismounted, boots thudding. Honor counts in deeds, not words. His gaze swept charred skyline. I see smoke, not honor. Jon kept tone calm. We contain sabotage. Your swords will steady the city. Stannis studied him, eyes smoldering blue. If war for crown erupts, bastard prince, pardon, legitimate now. You stand in my path. My claim precedes yours by blood. Jon felt coldness trickle spine. I claim only what Robert sets upon me. If law demands else, I yield to law. Law is written in blood, Stannis said. We will discuss once city secured. Melisandre's red gaze lingered on Jon. A faint smile playing. Shadow and light converge, young king. Beware the darkness within your fire. Jon ignored cryptic omen. He escorted Stannis through the gate. Citizens watched in wary hope as new troops marched to reinforce towers. Robert awaited in throne room, weariness masked by forced vigor. Stannis knelt, stiffly, and pledged swords to defend capital from rebellious lions. But when Robert ordered feast, Stannis declined, citing tactics. Night fell under uneasy truce. Stannis' men replaced half the city watch, quietly, ruthlessly. Varys' list of bribed captains matched many drawn for dismissal. Jon realized how swiftly loyalties might tilt when gold glimmered. He allowed Varys a rare satisfied smile. But new tension sparked. Renly resented Stannis' stern command. Gold cloaks muttered about foreign priests. Small folk feared red-robed Melisandre's talk of Lord of Light. Meanwhile, Tywin's engineers finished assembling trebuchets. On the second night after Stannis' arrival, a red glow loomed over the river. Tywin's catapults lobbed barrels of pitch against empty docks, igniting waterside warehouses untouched before. Jon and Stannis coordinated bucket brigades. Robert himself strode among flames, hammer swinging to break collapsing beams, as though muscle and fury alone could hold walls. The next morning, ravens screamed across the sky. One brought Ned Stark's sigil, but seals snapped in transit, message stolen or lost. Fear licked Jon's heart, and overdue 2 days. Another raven bore news that Renly had slipped from the city at dusk with Loras Tyrell and a retinue. Destination unreported. Seeds of fragmentation sprouted fast. Jon confronted Robert with report. The king slammed fist on oaken table until vessels rattled. "We hold a city of cracks," he growled. "One more fissure and the whole damn wall crumbles." That night, Jon climbed Kingspire Tower alone. Wind whipped cloak. Fires flickered along both camps, 2 constellations warring on land. He thought of Winterfell's quiet snows, of Sam's nerves, of Ghost's unwavering instinct. Above, the moon emerged through torn clouds. For a heartbeat, Jon felt stillness. Plans, fears, crowns, all receded under vast sky. Somewhere below, a bell tolled thrice, not for alarm but for counsel. He descended, duty calling again, and found Robert awaiting in council chamber with Stannis, Selmy, Varys, Pycelle. Ned Stark had returned, haggard, mail-rent, arm-bandaged. Jon's breath hitched. Relief replaced dread. Ned reported ambush on the Roserad, Mace Tyrell's riders mistakenly clashing with Stark escort. Parley avoided slaughter, but wagons lost. Men dead. Stannis spat curses. Robert roared. Tyrell's equivocation clear. He hedged. Jon stared at map. Allies slipping, enemies closing. Only chance remained. Break Tywin before Tyrell commits. He voiced plan. Strike pre-dawn raid on Lion Camp to burn siege engines, sow chaos. Stannis' fleet of Stormlanders still lay moored under city's guns. Rowboats could ferry raiders across river under fog. Robert grabbed idea, pounding table. A stag's charge before dawn. Summer in their veins, fire in ours. Stannis nodded grimly. "I will lead." Jon spoke quickly. "Better I go. Your grace and Lord Stannis anchor walls. My face unknown among lion sentries, I slip easier." "Done?" Robert frowned. "Too great a risk. One life against city's thousands," Jon countered. "And I trained on the wall for stealth." Stannis' gaze weighed him. "He has youth. Youth climbs quiet." Barristan volunteered to accompany. Robert relented after swearing Jon would return or be dragged back. On the 3rd hour past midnight, river mists rolled thick. 10 skiffs pushed silently from the secret postern below Maiden's Tower. Jon, Barristan, 10 picked men in black leather, torches wrapped in oil-soaked cloth bundles. Ghost swam ahead, pale wraith among reeds. Oars dipped without splash. They landed south of Lion Earthworks. Jon led creeping file through tall sedge to the first trebuchet. Hulking wooden beast smelling of fresh-cut pine. Guards drowsed by embers of cookfire. Jon signaled. Silent blades flashed. 2 sentries toppled. They drenched ropes with lamp oil. Shoved torches. Flames crackled upward. Second engine fell alike. But at third, an alarm cry erupted. A bleary-eyed guard stumbling from latrine. Jon sprinted, slicing across his chest, but horns sounded. Camp exploded into motion. Barristan barked. "Retreat!" They ignited final oil cask and fled toward river. Arrows hissed. One raider fell, feathered through throat. Another cried as bolt punched thigh. Jon dragged him until Barristan lifted. Ghost darted in and out, hamstringing a pursuer. Riverbank loomed when mounted lions cut them off. Sir Adam Marbrand leading. Sword glinting. Jon faced him, longclaw raised. They traded blows. Sparks. Slashed knight. Marbrand's heavier blade battered Jon into sand. The knight grinned. Bastard prince bleeds like any. Jon feinted low, then thrust high. Valyrian edge nicking Marbrand's helm strap dud-eyed. The knight reeled. Jon dove aside his Baratheon charged horse, hacking stirrup leather. Rider crashed. Ghost latched onto another horse's hind leg, causing chaos. Raiders reached skiffs, pushing off just as Lannister crossbows peppered water. In midstream, Jon glimpsed burning Ziga engines silhouetted. Smoldering giants vomiting sparks skyward. Shouts and horns receded. They had delivered wound, not death. But a wound might delay assault days. Back inside city. Cheer rose as raiders returned. Robert greeted them on dock, beaming, bloodlust bright despite wound. He clasped Jon fierce. Well done. Songs will sing. Songs feed none, Jon said, sagging. We need bread before ballads. Robert laughed, then winced at pain. True, but victory breeds hope. And hope feeds the spirit. Stannis' expression remained hooded, yet he told Jon quietly. You saved thousands. Remember? The next dawn, ravens flew from Red Keep to every corner. News of Lannister engines aflame, of Baratheon's stark defiance. Small folk cheered in taverns. Tyrell envoys hesitated stall. Sellswords re-evaluated contracts. But Tywin answered within hours. Trebuchet stones lobbed over river, smashing houses in poorest districts. Blood spattered cobbles. War had only just begun. Jon stood again on battlements, ash drifting over city like gray snow. He watched Tywin's banner still proudly waving, new engines assembling. He inhaled smoke, tasting bitter iron frustrations. Yet when he looked down to Ghost by his side, to Stormlander spearmen reinforcing walls, to Stark men rallying, he felt something like purpose strengthen bone and sinew. Night would come, winter too, but he would meet both as sworn. By earth and water, bronze and iron, ice and fire. And if the world demanded a king, he would strive to be the one it needed. No more, no less, until final breath steamed away in northern wind or southern blaze. Below, a bell tolled 9 times, the hour for bread distribution to the hungry. Jon descended, ready to serve, fight, or judge as fate required. None could say which would test him more, but all lay ahead like the twisting stone passages of the Red Keep itself, echoing and dark, with torchlight flickering at each uncertain turn.